Chapter 891 Jiangjuesher's Submission. Chapter 891 Jiangjuesher's Submission. Hanju frowned slightly at his bragging. Hanju thought this is definitely a fake, so be patient. Huang Zuantian noticed the change in his expression and immediately shut up. He started to reflect before Hanju could speak. What did he say wrong? Hanju said meaningfully, no matter what high position you are in or what achievements you have to always keep a low profile and maintain humility and caution. Back in the mortal world, you were arrogant and walked towards doom. All these years, you have been walking on thin ice. Perhaps you are tired, but this is the key to your success. Look at me again. When have I ever been proud? Huang Zuantian was ashamed. He had indeed woken up. Thinking about it carefully, he was quite arrogant now. He had a high and mighty attitude towards people and things. He had neglected his subordinates' thoughts, and was not as considerate towards his superiors as before. Huang Zuantian hurriedly said, I'm indeed too arrogant. Thank you for your reminder, master. I'll definitely do as I promised, but I won't say these things anymore. I'll use my actions to prove it. These words were a little high level. He promised and sincerely accepted Hanju's criticism. Anyway, Hanju felt quite comfortable. No wonder this fellow was doing well everywhere. Hanju asked, is there really nothing you need my help with? You can learn a mystical power if you want. Reading on Maibo XNOVL. Calm please. Huang Zuantian said, there's really no need. I usually won't make a move. I'll easily expose myself if I learn too much. I've grasped a great Tao Providence mystical power. It's enough to protect me at the critical moment. Hanju nodded and cancelled the dream. Huang Zuantian had developed very well, so he could rest assured. Hanju sent a dream to Sherdudao next as the Dark Forbidden Lord. This time, he gave him a mission. Think of a way to secretly spread the news that the Divine Authority General is a power used by the great Tao Divine Spirits to restrain the chaos. It's not just a rule. You have to think of a way for the other living beings to help spread the news. Don't take the lead. It's easy to deduce. Hanju reminded. This news was not very useful, but he wanted to plant a seed. What if it was useful? Sherdudao finally had a mission and immediately agreed excitedly. From the beginning to the end, he did not mention the battle of the heavenly Tao. The longer he stayed in the chaos, the more he knew how terrifying certain existences were. Some things could cause chaos just by talking about them behind their backs. Let me teach you a mystical power, Hanju said. Sherdudao immediately thanked him. Unlike Huang Zuantian, Sherdudao did not have so many opportunities. Hanju taught him 3 mystical powers that he seldom used. Then he cancelled the dream. He sent a dream to Li Daokong in his true form next. However, Li Daokong did not need a mystical power. The 10,000 life sword was enough for him to cultivate. Hanju didn't give him a mission. He hoped that he could take care of himself. Next was Jing Tiangong. Speaking of Jing Tiangong, this fellow had been wandering in the chaos, but he still hadn't made a name for himself. Hanju casually taught him a mystical power and ended the dream, but Jing Tiangong was still flattered. Only Divine Lord Peacock was left. Hanju checked his portrait in his interpersonal relationships and discovered that this fellow had yet to become a great Tao sage. He immediately had no intention of taking care of him. Worthless. He would wait until this guy became a great Tao sage. Hanju looked at the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao became even more lively after 100,000 years. The 2 chaotic heavenly roads were still being repaired. They would probably recover in at most 5,000 years. The heavenly Tao welcomed 2 more sages recently. This meant that the heavenly Tao was developing better and better. Not bad. Hanju closed his eyes in satisfaction and continued cultivating. In the dark purple starry sky, a figure moved forward quietly. It was Hanju's reincarnation avatar Liu Bei. Liu Bei scanned his surroundings nervously. After so long, he was still looking for a place for the 3rd Tao field. This area is alright. There are no living beings, but there are fewer restrictions. Liu Bei thought silently and felt a little regretful. Perhaps the previous hidden sect island had set a high standard for him. So he had special requirements when he searched for a place for the 3rd Tao field. At the very least, he could not see the Tao field with the naked eye. Liu Bei continued forward. Several months later, A huge crimson planet appeared in front of him, attracting his attention. This planet was filled with a mysterious aura. It was not chaotic chi or spirit chi, but it attracted him. He quietly approached. He wanted to use his divine sense to observe this planet, but it was isolated by a mysterious aura. He hesitated for a moment and decided to check. Perhaps this was the suitable place he was looking for. After landing, Liu Bei felt heat from the bottom of his feet, but there was no burning pain. The high temperature here could instantly fuse with an immortal emperor, but it was nothing to him. Liu Bei began to wander around and sized up the planet. He was very fast. After all, this planet was huge. Several hours later, Liu Bei suddenly stopped and stared at a hill ahead. The hill was bare and covered in magma. A figure was meditating halfway up the hill. This person wore a tattered robe. Most of his hair had fallen off, and his face was like dry bark. His eyes were tightly closed, but a vertical eye between his eyebrows stared at Liu Bei. Liu Bei was almost frightened to death as he broke out in cold sweat. Being stared at by that vertical eye, his blood ran cold. Liu Bei quietly retreated after a moment of stalemate. "Stop right there." An ancient voice sounded softly. Liu Bei immediately stopped. He knelt down and shouted, "Senior, I didn't mean to disturb you. I happened to be passing by. I also want to find a place to cultivate. I have no ill intentions. I'll pretend that I've never seen this place and never mention it." Liu Bei began to kowtow. The ancient voice said, "You're only a clone. Who is the main body?" Liu Bei replied, "My main body is Cao Cao from the Heavenly Tao." "Cao Cao, the Heavenly Tao is very far from here." Liu Bei lowered his head, feeling uneasy. "Don't leave. Stay here and cultivate." Yes. All right," Liu Bei agreed aggrievedly. In the blue sky, there were green mountains and rivers. A river crossed the mountains and rivers, floating like clouds. Han Tuo and Etion meditated in the forest. A black light descended from the sky and landed in front of the two of them, startling them so much that they opened their eyes. The black light dissipated and devil ancestor Lu Yuan appeared. Etion smiled teasingly. "You're still alive. I thought you were like the chaotic fiend celestials." Lu Yuan looked down at him and said, "I have a mission for you." Etion curled his lips. Han Tuo asked, "What mission?" "The leader of the divine spirits is summoning the great Tao divine spirits. Go immediately." "But we just escaped from him." "Don't worry. I've already discussed it with him. Let bygones be bygones. Gathering the divine spirits this time is a huge opportunity. The great Tao Sage realm will not be the limit in the future once you succeed," the devil ancestor Lu Yuan said indifferently. Han Tuo frowned. He smelled a conspiracy for some reason. He asked, "By the way, where's the divine authority generals?" Previously, there were rumors that 10,000 divine authority generals were about to attack the heavenly Tao. Chapter 892 Supreme Treasure of the Ancient Desolate, Shocking the Heavenly Tao. Chapter 892 Supreme Treasure of the Ancient Desolate, Shocking the Heavenly Tao. "Thank you for your lecture, Senior. This Tao is indeed impressive. I'm willing to cultivate this Tao. Senior, please allow me." Jiang Juesher stood up and bowed sincerely. Han Ju said, "The previous lecture was already enough for you to cultivate for some time. I'll guide you when you attain the great Tao." With that he vanished. Jiang Juesher was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to leave so quickly. Liu Bei also came to a realization and smiled. "To be willing to take out 10,000 years to preach the Tao to you. It seems that this senior still thinks highly of you. I've never listened to the Tao for so long." Jiang Juesher was very happy, and was no longer vigilant upon hearing this. He could sense that the other party was indeed not plotting anything. After comprehending the great Tao of extreme origin, he understood that the difference between him and the other party was unimaginable. The great reincarnation creation technique that he was so proud of was probably not worth mentioning in the other party's eyes. No matter how powerful a cultivation technique was, could it compare to the great Tao? Jiang Juesher was no longer worried. He was so vigilant in the past, because he was afraid that the other party would covet it. Then the two of them continued to meditate and cultivate. They were all in a good mood. Jiang Juesher had a beautiful future ahead of him. Liu Bei thought that he was about to complete the mission his master had given him. Visit myboxnovel.com to read, please. In a world, the forest rose and fell. The sky was high and the sea was far away. A majestic mountain towered into the clouds. At the top of the mountain was a huge peacock. It was even larger than the entire mountain. The surrounding sea of clouds looked small in front of it. A beam of light sped over and stopped in front of the huge peacock. A burly man in black armor and a phoenix-winged iron crown appeared after the light dissipated. The black-armored man cupped his fists and bowed. Divine Lord, I learned that the 5 great divine punishers have entered the ancient desolate for some time. The huge peacock was Divine Lord Peacock. Divine Lord Peacock slowly opened his eyes and asked, "What about the situation in the ancient desolate?" "There's no movement for now. The phenomenon you mention has never appeared either." Divine Lord Peacock closed his eyes. It was unknown what he was thinking. The black-armored man couldn't help but ask, "Divine Lord, what are you waiting for?" Divine Lord Peacock said casually, "The ancient desolate contains a huge opportunity. Why did the 5 great divine punishers enter? It's because the ancient desolate is powerful enough. I even suspect that the Tao ancestor is hiding there." The black-armored man nodded. The ancient desolate was formed by the Tao ancestor. The Tao ancestor captured many experts and suppressed them in the ancient desolate in the past. He paused and asked in surprise, "But you still didn't say what you were waiting for." Divine Lord Peacock opened his eyes and stared coldly at the black-armored man, scaring him so much that he hurriedly lowered his head. "Just to keep an eye on him. You'll definitely benefit in the future," Divine Lord Peacock said coldly, scaring the black-armored man so much that he hurriedly nodded. Then the black-armored man bowed and left. Divine Lord Peacock stared in the direction he had left in deep thought. "Forbidden Lord, oh Forbidden Lord, I can only contribute like this if you don't contact me." Divine Lord Peacock thought helplessly. He thought that the Dark Forbidden Lord was dissatisfied with him. He had attained the Great Tao too slowly. Previously, he had even caused trouble and had to be personally saved by the Dark Forbidden Lord. Divine Lord Peacock's eyes became firm. He had to obtain that treasure. Why would he worry about not being able to help the Dark Forbidden Lord after obtaining it? Although Divine Lord Peacock did not know what the Dark Forbidden Lord's great ambition was, it was definitely related to the entire chaos. More than 10 sages gathered in the Universal Hall. Most sages had their own responsibilities. It was very difficult for all of them to be in the heavenly Tao at the same time. There were already 10 chaotic heavenly roads now. They had established a good trading channel in this chaotic domain. One could obtain the protection of the heavenly Tao upon walking on the chaotic heavenly road. This was something that other worlds could not compare to. The 3 pure sacred world was also lacking this, so it had always been suppressed by the heavenly Tao. Cultivators were not afraid of being attacked by sages and existences above with the heavenly Tao's protection. Although it was not absolutely safe, they could at least avoid many troubles. As I summoned you today to talk about the ancient desolate. The ancient desolate has become independent ever since the deity realm of the ruins of End was shattered by the Tao devils. However, the ancient desolate is still a forbidden land after millions of years. Ancient mighty figures will occasionally escape. Not long ago, I heard that a supreme treasure is about to appear in the ancient desolate. This supreme treasure can stir up the chaos. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du scanned the sages and said slowly. Many sages were moved at the mention of the ancient desolate. The ancient desolate was the most frequently mentioned in the chaos. They each had their own forces. Many disciples wandered in the chaos and naturally had this information. Even sages already had their eyes on that supreme treasure. Pan Xian smiled. Heavenly Venerate wants to snatch this treasure? Heavenly Venerate Xian Du shook his head. On the contrary, I want to remind you that you can't go to the ancient desolate. Also, that supreme treasure can't be stolen. The new sage, Yang Tiandong, couldn't help but ask why. He had just attained the Tao and had swept away his previous depression. He was filled with motivation and wanted to achieve something, so he also targeted the ancient desolate. The other sages also looked puzzled. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du replied, I've calculated that the ancient desolate will cause a calamity. We might endanger the heavenly Tao if we're not careful. Threaten the heavenly Tao. The sages were in an uproar. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate chuckled. Heavenly Venerate, isn't this too exaggerated? Could there be 30,000 divine authority generals hidden in the ancient desolate? The sages also laughed. That's right. How could the heavenly Tao be in danger with the divine might heavenly sage around? Heavenly Venerate Xiandu said. Everyone, don't forget the Tao ancestor. Pangu has revived. As for the Tao ancestor, whose fate is unknown, are you sure he's dead? Are you going to give way if the Tao ancestor returns and wants to regain control of the heavenly Tao? The atmosphere in the hall was oppressive again when the Tao ancestor was mentioned. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate, Pan Xian and Yang Tiandong stopped talking. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du was about to speak when a great pressure descended from the sky. It was a pillar of light that pierced through the 33rd heaven and landed in front of the universal hall. It passed through the layers of clouds and landed in a mortal world below the immortal world. The sages were shocked. What's that? What a terrifying pressure. It's a great Tao sage. Wait, why did it fall from above? That pillar of light actually fell into a mortal body. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du frowned. He counted with his fingers, and his expression changed drastically. He actually couldn't deduce it. He even panicked. This was a feeling he had never felt before. What happened? 3 figures appeared in the hall at this moment. They were Great Sage Void Soul, the Foolish Sword Sage and Red Fate. What was that just now? The Foolish Sword Sage asked in a low voice. He was also shocked. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du frowned and asked, You can't deduce it either? The Foolish Sword Sage was the strongest existence in the heavenly Tao other than the divine might heavenly sage. Red Fate also looked at the Foolish Sword Sage in surprise. The gazes of the sages made the Foolish Sword Sage even more displeased. He snorted. Why would I come if I could deduce it? That thing just now didn't come from the top of the heavenly Tao, but from the top of the chaos. You have to be careful about this. Don't let the enemy scheme against the heavenly Tao again. His eyes became colder as he turned to look at the mortal world. He was a great Tao Supreme, but there was actually something he could not see through. Chapter 893 Tao Creator's Power. Chapter 893 Tao Creator's Power. While the heavenly Tao sage was shocked by the mysterious pillar of light, 3 lines of notifications appeared in front of Hanju. Detected that the Tao Creator's power has entered the chaos. You have the following choices. 1. Go and destroy this power immediately and promote the dominance of the primordial fiend celestial. You can obtain a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, a creation spirit stone, a heavenly Tao spirit stone, a supreme treasure, and the Tao Creator's hatred. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and stay away from trouble. Avoid the attention of the Tao Creator for now. You can obtain a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, and a creation spirit stone. Tao Creator? Hanju's eyelids twitched. This was an existence he could not provoke. Although the reward for the first option was very generous, he could only choose the second option. Hanju silently made his choice. You chose to cultivate in a low-profile manner and stay away from trouble. You temporarily avoided the sharpness of the Tao Creator and obtained a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, and a creation spirit stone. Hanju immediately took out the creation spirit stone and chose a ball of fiend celestial chi to fuse with. His will jumped above the chaos and looked down at it, wanting to see where the power was. Soon, he was attracted by the heavenly Tao. Visit myboxnovel.com to read, please. There was an extremely bright light in the heavenly Tao. It was the brightest in the entire chaos and was extremely eye-catching. Hanju looked over. The light came from a mortal world. It was a child. The child was just born. His cries were loud and world-shattering. It was even more powerful than when Qin Ling was born. His cries shocked the entire world and terrified countless cultivators. Hanju discovered that he couldn't spy on this child. This child had a powerful force, and there was a golden pattern between his eyebrows like a closed vertical eye. The powerful force came from the golden pattern. Hanju retracted his gaze and asked in his mind, which Tao Creator did that child's power come from? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Chaotic consciousness. Cultivation unknown chaotic deity, above the great Tao, rules and order unspeakable name. It was him. The first Tao creator that Hanju learned about. This fellow finally couldn't take it anymore. Hanju continued to ask, why is the chaotic consciousness doing this? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Hanju didn't enter the illusion. For words appeared in front of him. Chaotic change, chaotic change? What was the meaning of this? Hanju pondered carefully. Could it be because of the recent changes in the chaos? Why didn't the chaotic consciousness target the ultimate god of punishment, but throw its power into the heavenly Tao? Could it be that this fellow wanted to arouse the ultimate god's fear? He could hope him in with Hanju around. However, could he really be fearless if there was another Hanju? There was another possibility. The chaotic consciousness hoped that the chaos would be more chaotic. After all, there was still the 9th chaos above him. Hanju thought for a while and stopped thinking about it. In any case, he couldn't go against a Tao creator for now. Thus, he would pretend not to know about this. Currently, he had already gathered 9 great Tao fragments, and could create another great Tao mystical power. A great Tao mystical power was not a great Tao level mystical power, but a mystical power equivalent to the profundity of the great Tao. Hanju fell into deep thought. After a long while, he had an idea. He didn't lack strange mystical powers now. It was better to create a powerful mystical power that was convenient to teach to disciples. He could create mystical powers, but he couldn't create a great Tao mystical power. He wanted to create an unparalleled mystical power that could be the signboard of the hidden sect. Others would know that they were a personal disciple of the hidden sect upon seeing this mystical power. Hanju took out the 9 great Tao fragments and fused them. A strong light burst out and illuminated the entire Taoist temple. In the mortal world, dozens of servants knelt in front of a dazzling palace. In front of them was a middle-aged man in a python-patterned golden robe walking back and forth with an anxious expression. At this moment, the palace door opened and an old woman came out with a kasaya. The middle-aged man hurriedly went up and asked nervously, "Is it intact?" His gaze landed on the swaddled baby, and he immediately beamed. This baby's skin was fair and cute, unlike the skin of a newborn. Most importantly, the golden pattern between his eyebrows looked especially divine. The old woman smiled. "It's fine. The little prince's cries are so loud. He's really extraordinary." The middle-aged man had also heard it earlier. It was indeed deafening, causing him to panic. He thought that something had happened. He had children before this. When had their cries been so loud? The middle-aged man took his son with a smile. At this moment, a golden light shone down, startling the nearby servants. They crawled back. The middle-aged man was also shocked, but he still pretended to be calm. The golden light dissipated, and an old Taoist appeared. He waved his horsetail whisk and smiled. "I'm an immortal god from the heavens. Tao Lord Wu Du, seeing that this child is extraordinary today, I want to take him as a disciple and nurture him to become an immortal and seek the Tao." Everyone was shocked by his words. The middle-aged man trembled in excitement and asked carefully, "Immortal, are you serious?" Tao Lord Wu Du smiled. "I'm not talking nonsense." Boom! Heavenly lightning exploded, startling everyone so much that they looked up. They saw dark clouds suddenly gather and surge ferociously, making them panic. A green dragon was churning in the thundercloud. It was a spectacular sight. The green dragon stretched out a dragon head that was larger than a palace and said, "This child is fated with our dragon race. He can inherit our inheritance." The middle-aged man was stunned. Tao Lord Wu Du frowned, and thought that it was troublesome. However, this was not the end. A white crane came from the east. On the back of the crane stood a fairy. She wore an exquisite Taoist robe, and her long hair fluttered. "This child is a destined disciple of our Jie school. Fellow Taoists, please don't fight with us." The Taoist-robed fairy's voice resounded through the world, extremely cold. All the mortals in front of the palace were stunned. They had never seen such a scene. At the same time, in the Universal Hall the sages saw this scene. Ji Xianxian smiled. "These guys run really fast." The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate said, "I want to see whose disciple doesn't have good judgment." and can sit still." The other sages laughed as well. They were secretly informing their disciples to rope in the mortal child, favored by the mysterious force. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu frowned and felt uneasy. The foolish sword sage saw through his emotions and said, "I can't see through it. But why worry since even the divine might heavenly sage isn't moving?" Heavenly Venerate Xiandu felt that it made sense. How could Hanju sit by and watch if there was really a threat? Heavenly Venerate Xiandu said, "This child's background is extraordinary. He had to be taught well no matter who obtains him. Don't let him take the evil path." The sages smiled and nodded. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu's words meant that he had given up on the opportunity to fight for this child. Great Sage Void Soul couldn't help but say, "In my opinion, we should suppress it and seal it as soon as possible to prevent future trouble." Chapter 894 Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. Azure Heaven Mystic. Chapter 894 Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. Azure Heaven Mystic in the Third Tao Field. Hanju finally opened his eyes after an unknown period of time. He had successfully created a new great Tao mystical power. He named this mystical power the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. This palm was ferocious. Any power, thing, and even rules could be destroyed. It only had the power to destroy. It was absolutely destroyed and could not be repaired. Hanju began the simulation trial and challenged 10,000 foolish sword sages. He only used the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. He used his domineering dermic powers and killed 10,000 foolish sword sages with a single palm. It was very easy. He continued to challenge more foolish sword sages. He fought with 20,000 foolish sword sages before finally winning. Hanju suddenly had a better idea. He used the Dharma Idol fusion technique to fuse with 2,449 fiend celestial Dharma idols before using the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. 20,000 foolish sword sages were insta-killed. Hanju's confidence multiplied. He challenged his limits again. 25,000 foolish sword sages. He killed all of them with a single palm strike after using the Dharma Idol fusion technique and the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. Previously, he had always used the Dharma Idol fusion technique to wield the Primordial Judgment Sword. However, the Primordial Judgment Sword was only a Dharma treasure, after all. It was more powerful if he used a Dharma treasure to wield a mystical power. Visit myboxnovel.com to read, please. Hanju decided to create another great Tao mystical power regarding the Sword Tao next time. He didn't do it this time because the Sword Tao couldn't bypass Laozi. How could the hidden sect base itself on the Sword Tao? Hanju continued the simulation trial. In the end, he could no longer insta-kill the foolish sword sages when the number reached 30,000. He could only win after a fierce battle. It took him 100 years to create the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm, but the outcome satisfied him. The Divine Might Great Heaven Palm was definitely the most domineering palm technique mystical power he had ever seen. This would be the hidden sect's ultimate technique from now on. Hanju immediately came to the second Tao field and preached the Tao to all the fiend celestials, teaching them the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. The chaotic fiend celestials were all people with powerful bodies and were not good at using Dharma treasures. Most of them liked to rely on their physical talent. Thus, they were very suitable for the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. Hanju directly began to preach the Tao and made the 49 fiend celestials enter a state of Tao comprehension as they began to comprehend the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. 100 years later, Hanju came to the 100-peak Immortal River and asked Han Zuetian to choose 10 geniuses of the hidden sect. Several days later, Han Zuetian brought 10 pseudo-sage geniuses over. They represented the sect's hope. Hanju encouraged them. The 10 geniuses were extremely excited. They kept kowtowing and paying respects to the ancestor. He also harvested a wave of 6-star favorability, and there were no traitors with low stars or hatred. These geniuses' talent was still a little lacking. They only learned it after Hanju preached for 1,000 years. Hanju especially reminded them that this was a secret technique of the hidden sect and could not be taught to outsiders. The 10 geniuses were even more excited, feeling that they had been acknowledged by their ancestor. Hanju waved his hand for them to leave. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked at the immortal world and the person who had obtained the chaotic consciousness power. The child had long grown up after more than 1,000 years. He had joined the heavenly race and become a peerless prodigy. Although he was only 1,000 years old, he was already an immortal emperor. Becoming an immortal emperor in 1,000 years. The world was shaken. His name had already spread throughout the immortal world. Azure Heaven Mystic. As this was not his original name, he changed his name after stepping into cultivation. He even severed all karma with the mortal world. Azure Heaven Mystic was proud and arrogant. He was famous in the heavenly race. He received high treatment in the two worlds with the heavenly race's power. In just 1,000 years, rumors already abounded in the immortal world that Azure Heaven Mystic was comparable to the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. The Divine Might Heavenly Sage had become a sage at 30,000 years old. It was not impossible for Azure Heaven Mystic to do it, too. Hanju smiled when he learned of this. It would indeed be a waste if this kid couldn't attain the Tao in 30,000 years, with the Tao creator's inheritance. Hanju began to observe Azure Heaven Mystic. The fact that Azure Heaven Mystic had joined the heavenly race was equivalent to going under Hanju. This was probably the outcome after the sages discussed. Otherwise, how could the heavenly race snatch him? Azure Heaven Mystic was extremely talented, but his personality was also extreme. At first, the sages who did not obtain Azure Heaven Mystic were very disappointed, but they were gloating now. Hanju saw that Azure Heaven Mystic was bullying his fellow disciples. This fellow challenged 10,000 immortal emperors alone. He even humiliated them after attaining victory. He was extremely arrogant. The humiliated immortal emperors didn't dare to say anything. They couldn't defeat him, and could only endure. This was not the first time. Ha 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 ha. You immortal emperors have cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and finally entered the cycle of reincarnation. You don't need to cultivate as mortals. Can you really repay the heavenly race for nurturing you? I would definitely demote all of you to the mortal world, to prevent you from embarrassing the heavenly race, if I were the heavenly ancestor. A blue-robed youth smiled proudly on a vast platform, 10,000 immortal emperors lying within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. All of them were red in the face and trembling. The blue-robed youth was Azure Heaven Mystic. He was handsome and had a tall figure. His waist was wrapped in a pearl ribbon, and he wore cloud boots. He wore a vermilion bird headband, and looked like an immortal who had walked out of a painting. A group of heavenly race immortals flew over at this moment. One of the fairies reprimanded him. Azure Heaven Mystic, don't humiliate your fellow disciples. Azure Heaven Mystic glanced at her and said disdainfully, You little girl, what are you shouting for? Come down and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts. Watch as I, the Emperor Realm, trample on your deity realm and let you, a high and mighty fairy, cry for mercy under my feet. The immortals around the fairy were indignant and cursed. Azure Heaven Mystic was not angry. Instead, he laughed even more wildly. A bunch of ants who only dared to curse. Do you dare to come down and fight? See if I don't beat you all until you die. Azure Heaven Mystic laughed wildly. He actually had the upper hand, as he bickered with the other party alone. Hanju shook his head and laughed. He couldn't be bothered to do anything. After all, a Tao creator was behind him. He didn't hate Azure Heaven Mystic much. Although this person had a foul mouth and was arrogant, he did not kill his fellow disciples. It was worth mentioning that even though Azure Heaven Mystic was so famous, he did not have a single life in his hands. He hadn't even killed worms or plants. He wouldn't step on flowers if he saw them when this kid was young. He would fly if he could. In a sense, Azure Heaven Mystic was the cleanest person in the world. Hanju stopped looking at him. He teleported to the third Tao field, and called Han Qing'er into the Taoist temple. Father, what is it? Han Qing'er raised her eyebrows and asked in high spirits. Hanju said, I recently created a mystical power. It will be the signature mystical power of the hidden sect in the future. Do you want to learn it? Han Qing'er curled her lips. How powerful can a temporarily created mystical power be? Teach me some ancient mystical power. Thinking highly of ancient creations and belittling modern works. This was the same for all races. Hanju smiled faintly. Why don't you try in the dream? Han Qing'er hurriedly shook her head. I'll learn. I'll learn. Han Ju immediately preached the Tao and taught the mystical power. The lecture ended 200 years later. Han Qing'er opened her eyes in shock. There's actually such a mystical power in the world. It's as exquisite and profound as the great Tao. Han Qing'er looked at her father in admiration. Han Ju was secretly pleased. Chapter 895 Ji Xianxin's Ambition, Domineering Prodigy. Chapter 895 Ji Xianxin's Ambition, Domineering Prodigy. This palm is too ferocious. Don't use it unless it's a life and death battle, especially against the disciples in the Tao field. Han Ju reminded, afraid that she would act recklessly. Han Qing'er nodded. Don't worry, father. I know what to do. I'm not an arrogant and reckless person. Han Ju smiled and nodded. For some reason, he thought of Azure Heaven Mystic. His arrogance was indeed the highest he had ever seen. He didn't know if it was intentional. He was so arrogant, but there was no karma. It was very strange. Han Ju thought for a moment, and opened the simulation trial for Han Qing'er. Then he introduced it to her, so that she could use it in the future. Han Qing'er was very surprised and immediately went forward. The current simulation trial had already copied many experts of all realms, including hidden sect disciples. Several hours later, Han Qing'er opened her eyes and said excitedly, Father, what mystical power is this? It's so realistic. It's even more realistic than a dream. Han Ju said, it contains either hidden sect disciples or enemies I've encountered before. It's enough for you to use for countless years. Han Qing'er nodded and left. She returned to her mother's side and continued to immerse herself in the simulation trial. She looked like an internet addict. Han Ju didn't find it funny. After all, his personal disciples were the same back then. They were addicted for hundreds of years, or even longer before returning to normal. Visit myboxnovel.com to read, please. Then, Han Ju closed his eyes and continued cultivating. Heavenly Tao, outside the 33rd heaven. In the heavenly ancestor palace, Ji Xianxin stared at the immortals in the hall with a dark expression. They were all heavenly race immortals. Although most of the immortals of the heavenly race lived in the netherworld, as Ji Xianxin attained the Tao, they began to return to the 9th level of the immortal world and secretly compete with the heavenly Tao sect. I asked you to teach Azure Heaven Mystic well, but now such a joke has happened. Who's responsible for this? Ji Xianxin asked coldly as he scanned everyone. The immortals looked at each other. No one replied. Ji Xianxin said coldly, Bring me Azure Heaven Mystic. I want to teach him personally. No immortal god refused. They agreed. Ji Xianxin was annoyed. He immediately waved his sleeve and gestured for all the immortals to leave. Although the heavenly race was huge, they did not have any useful immortals. He couldn't help but think of the hidden sect. Should he ask Li Xianao to send him some geniuses? The hidden sect had the deepest foundation in the entire immortal world. There were countless geniuses, and their forces covered the heavenly Tao. Ji Xianxin closed his eyes and cultivated after the immortals left. Several days later, an immortal god brought Azure Heaven Mystic into the hall and bid farewell. Only Ji Xianxin and Azure Heaven Mystic were left in the hall. Ji Xianxin sized him up and was increasingly satisfied. It had to be said that this kid was indeed talented. Perhaps he could really catch up to his master. Azure Heaven Mystic said proudly, Why did the sage summon me? Could it be that you want to take me in as your disciple? I've already acknowledged a master, and will never acknowledge a second master. Although the sage is far stronger than my master, I can't forget my roots. Ji Xianxin smiled. Why should I be your master? I'm your ancestor. Azure Heaven Mystic was stunned. Although the heavenly race had sages, they were not of the same lineage. He didn't expect his master to be the disciple of a sage. He immediately bowed and said, Greetings, ancestor. Ji Xianxin asked, You clearly have great kindness in your heart. Why are you so arrogant and trampling on the dignity of others? Azure Heaven Mystic looked up. Ancestor, I can't stand those people. They bully the weak and stick together. I like to target geniuses. I want to see who in the world has greater talent than me. His face was still filled with arrogance. Ji Xianxin was helpless. They would have long died if anyone else dared to speak to a sage like this. This kid was the only one who said that others were bullying people because of their strength and talent, but he did the same thing himself. You'll cultivate in my Tao field for 10,000 years before returning to the immortal world, Ji Xianxian said seriously. He already had a plan. He wanted Azure Heaven Mystic to participate in the chaotic assembly. Although this kid started late, his potential was vast. It was just like his master, who had become the strongest in the chaos after millions of years. Azure Heaven Mystic hesitated for a moment and said, "All right. Thank you, Ancestor." Ji Xianxian waved his right hand, and a mat landed in front of him. Azure Heaven Mystic understood, and walked forward to sit down. Time passed quickly. 10,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Hanju was still in seclusion, but the Azure Heaven Mystic had already come out. In the past 10,000 years, other than cultivating Tao techniques, Ji Xianxian had also taught him many mystical powers. Azure Heaven Mystic's cultivation level had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had already reached the 6th Mystic Divine Origin, and was only a step away from the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm. This was even after he had spent a lot of time on mystical powers and comprehension. Otherwise, breaking through to the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm in 10,000 years would definitely not be difficult. Azure Heaven Mystic flew out of the Heavenly Ancestor Palace. He had changed into a white robe, and had a heroic figure. His temperament was extraordinary. One could feel the aura of a prodigy just by looking at his figure. He didn't leave the 33rd heaven immediately, but wandered nearby. He had come in a hurry, and had yet to see this sky that only belonged to sages. The 33rd heaven was vast, with dozens of Tao field. As he flew, he occasionally encountered Tao seekers who looked at him in surprise. How dare a deity realm cultivator come to the 33rd heaven? He was tempting fate. The cultivators who could come here were at least Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals. Otherwise, they were not qualified to go to the Sage Tao field to seek the Tao. Azure Heaven Mystic didn't know what they were thinking, and did not disturb them. Azure Heaven Mystic bent down, and rushed towards the immortal world after walking through all the Sage Tao field. A figure sped over, and stopped him after passing through more than 10 layers of sky. It was a beautiful woman in a purple-red immortal dress. Her hair was slightly messy, and spots of blood could be seen on her body. She looked terrified. "Fellow Taoist, please save me," the woman said anxiously. Azure Heaven Mystic frowned. The woman said, "I'm a heavenly Tao immortal god. I offended the disciples of the Jia school. They're chasing after me." Azure Heaven Mystic said, "Oh, I'll definitely thank you in the future as long as you can save me. Get lost." The woman in the immortal dress was stunned. At this moment, more than 10 disciples of the Jia school flew over on their swords. "Demon, where are you running to?" shouted angrily the middle-aged man in the lead holding a pagoda. Then a green light shot out from the pagoda towards Azure Heaven Mystic and the woman. Azure Heaven Mystic's eyes narrowed. He turned around, and a vertical eye opened between his brows. Golden light shot out from his eyes and destroyed the green light of the pagoda. "Who are you? How dare you stop the Jia school?" the middle-aged man asked angrily. The other disciples stopped and waited. The woman in the immortal dress said anxiously, "Fellow Taoist, they are after my Dharma treasure. You have to save." Azure Heaven Mystic turned around and slapped her before she could finish speaking, causing her to vomit blood and fly out, piercing through the clouds. Azure Heaven Mystic said disdainfully, "Nonsense. Don't wander the immortal world if you don't have the ability." He turned to look at the group of the Jia school disciples and said, "I hate people who bully others the most. It's your fate to meet me today. I'll teach you a lesson. Come at me together." Chapter 896 Trapped Will. Chapter 896 Trapped Will. The disciples of the Jia school were naturally furious as they faced the unruly Azure Heaven Mystic. They took out their Dharma treasures and cast spells at him. "Good timing. I'll let you see what invincible means today." Azure Heaven Mystic laughed wildly. The vertical eye between his eyebrows opened. Shadows of divine light flew out from it at an extremely fast speed, passing through the bodies of the Jia school disciples. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with divine light shadows. The posture of each shadow was different, as if different moves were being disassembled. The Jie school disciples couldn't move. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Azure Heaven Mystic smiled disdainfully and left. He had just descended from the clouds when a blood mist bloomed above his head. Screams sounded. In the Taoist temple of the third Tao field, Hanju slowly opened his eyes. 100,000 years had passed. The primordial world expanded again. The nebulous primordial qi was becoming denser. The fiend celestial qi had already separated, and were far away from each other. Perhaps the depths of Hanju's soul would also be the beginning of another era, if the primordial world could really become the primordial world, and the 3,000 chaotic fiend celestials were successfully nurtured. Hanju couldn't help but think of the ninth chaos. Could the chaos he was in be the ninth chaos soul? Visit myboxnovel.com to read, please. That would be too terrifying. Hanju could control every corner of the primordial world, and could even use his will to control space and other rules. He could even use the primordial world to kill it with a thought if a fiend celestial wanted to harm him. He had absolute control over his world. I can't rashly offend the ninth chaos or destroy it unless I reach the Creator Lord realm. Hanju thought silently and checked the emails. Your disciple Tao Sovereign was attacked by a Tao Devil, X89211092. Your disciple. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure, and was severely injured. Your good friend Huang Zuantian has entered the bottom of the chaos. Your good friend Ultimate God of Punishment's soul wandered outside the chaos. He has comprehended the true meaning of chaos, and his cultivation has increased. Your disciple Zhou Fan was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure, and was severely injured. Your good friend Divine Lord Peacock has entered the Ancient Desolate. Your good friend Divine Lord Peacock was cursed by a mysterious curse. His will is trapped. His circle of friends began to stir again. Many people were injured. Hanju was attracted by the Ultimate God of Punishment's move. He could even comprehend the true meaning of chaos outside the chaos. What was going on? The Ultimate God of Punishment had finally become the leader of the divine spirits. Why didn't he cultivate in peace and still go out to travel? To be honest, Hanju liked the Ultimate God of Punishment. The chaos could be peaceful for longer with him around. He wouldn't touch the Ultimate God of Punishment, and continue to let him be the leader of the divine spirits, even if Hanju surpassed the Tao Creator realm, if peace could really last. Hanju inexplicably felt that the Ultimate God of Punishment would fail. Sigh. He couldn't care less. Hanju continued to read the emails. Divine Lord Peacock had run to the Ancient Desolate. Why? Hanju remembered it. After reading all the emails, his will jumped to the chaos. Looking down at the chaos, his gaze landed on the Ancient Desolate. From a macro point of view, the Ancient Desolate was not far from the Heavenly Tao. They were both domains under the Divine Rogue Taoist. The Ancient Desolate was very mysterious. It was one of the places in the chaos that could not be spied on. Hanju carefully observed the Ancient Desolate, wanting to see through it. The Ancient Desolate seemed to be enveloped by a black mist. A tail could be vaguely seen churning, but it also seemed like an illusion. There's something in the Ancient Desolate that can actually trap the will of a great Tao sage. It's at least a great Tao Supreme, right? Hanju thought silently. It couldn't hide the prying of a great Tao Supreme, if there was no great Tao Supreme. Hanju's will retreated to his body after observing for a while. He teleported into the 100-peak Immortal River, and arrived at the third Tao field. With a wave of his right hand, he brought Su Qi Ji Xianxian, Long Hao Li Xianao, Hanyu, Qin Ling, Fong Liang, and Yang Tiandong into the Taoist temple. The interior of the Taoist temple had already expanded, and was enough to accommodate so many people. The sages opened their eyes and hurriedly knelt when they saw Hanju. They were shocked. They knew that Hanju was very strong, far stronger than them, but they didn't expect to be caught off guard, and moved into his Taoist temple. This was too exaggerated. Hanju said, "I'll teach you a mystical power today. This is a mystical power I created for the hidden sect. It can't be taught to others or your disciples. I'll cripple you if you spread it." The sages promised solemnly. They were looking forward to it. For him to preach so solemnly, it must be an impressive mystical power. Hanju began to preach. The sages woke up 100 years later, and they had already returned to their respective Tao field. They recalled the divine might great heaven palm with shock. What a domineering mystical power! Their hearts burned with reverence for Hanju. On the other side in the main Tao field, Hanju didn't leave. He looked at the immortal world next. After 100,000 years, Azure Heaven Mystic was already a pseudo-sage, but he had yet to attain the Tao. The reason was that the recent heavenly Tao did not have a sage position available. Azure Heaven Mystic was born in the heavenly Tao and grew in it. He had to rely on the heavenly Tao's providence to become a sage. Hanju was different. He had always cultivated in the Tao field in the past, and all his resources depended on the system. The heavenly Tao's providence he received was directly suppressed in the primordial world. Tao's sovereign, Zhou Fan, and the others left the heavenly Tao to search for opportunities alone, and use their strength to attain the Tao. Azure Heaven Mystic also wanted to leave the heavenly Tao, but the sages did not let him. This fellow was too talented, and could not be abducted by other worlds. They comforted Azure Heaven Mystic that the next sage position would definitely be given to him. He had been persuaded several times, but he could only wait. It would take time no matter how fast the new sage position appeared. Azure Heaven Mystic couldn't wait anymore. Hanju happened to see Azure Heaven Mystic changing his identity and heading to Chaotic City, wanting to leave through the chaotic heavenly road. As a pseudo-sage, Azure Heaven Mystic's transformation technique was very powerful. Only sages could see through it. As it happened, sages were staring at him at this moment. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate stopped him and brought him to his Tao field. He chatted with him warmly and discussed the Tao with him to stall for time. It wasn't good for him to slap a smiling face. Azure Heaven Mystic could only force himself to discuss the Tao. Hanju almost laughed upon seeing this scene. Looks like these guys want him to participate in the chaotic assembly. Hanju thought silently. He had no intention of taking in another disciple. This fellow's karma was too great. So great that he didn't dare to tell the sages about this. However, he couldn't let Azure Heaven Mystic dominate the chaotic assembly. In that case, wouldn't it be falling into the chaotic consciousness trap? Azure Heaven Mystic's reputation and status would increase exponentially when he represented the heavenly Tao to become the peak of the chaotic era. He might become the heavenly Tao's leader. Hanju would definitely be discovered by the chaotic consciousness if he used the primordial heavenly prison. Hanju couldn't directly contact Azure Heaven Mystic before reaching the level of Tao Creator. So he thought of another way. He wanted Jiang Juesher to step on Azure Heaven Mystic to ascend. Jiang Juesher was far from 100 million years old in this life. He was young enough to participate in the chaotic assembly. Hanju returned to the third Tao field and visited Jiang Juesher in his dreams. Chapter 897 6 million years old. Only one piece missing. Chapter 897 6 million years old. Only one piece missing in the dream. Jiang Juesher opened his eyes and saw Hanju, who was shining with divine light. He immediately bowed. He had been looking forward to the next lecture ever since the last one. The great Tao of extreme origin was too exquisite, finally allowing him to see the hope of attaining the great Tao. Hanju said, "Your cultivation has been good recently." Jiang Juesher said humbly, "Thank you for your lecture, senior." Hanju asked, "What's your cultivation goal?" Jiang Juesher was stunned. All living beings have spirits. With spirits they have hearts. With hearts they have motives and expectations. Their hearts will have motives in advance before doing anything. You're still cultivating now. What do you want? Hanju asked casually. These words struck Jiang Juesher's heart. He said, "I want to reach the highest realm of cultivation. I want to revive an old friend." Hanju said, "Cultivation is endless. Your realm will constantly increase as long as you keep cultivating. As for reviving your old friends, there's a chance now. The chaos will launch a chaotic assembly. If you become a great Tao divine spirit, reviving a person is as easy as flipping your palm." Jiang Juesher's eyes lit up. He hurriedly asked about the chaotic assembly. Hanju told the truth. Jiang Juesher's blood boiled after learning the details. Visit MyBoX novel.com to read, please. This was an unprecedented gathering of geniuses. As expected of the chaotic assembly, Jiang Juesher would definitely hesitate if it was the previous him. After all, he didn't have a backing. He would most likely attract calamity if he stood out. However, it was different now. This senior could be his backing. Senior, Jiang Juesher hesitated. There were some things he had never said and was embarrassed about. Hanju asked, "Are you willing to acknowledge me as your master?" Jiang Juesher secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Be it in the heavenly Tao or the chaos, there was no relationship more stable than master and disciple. It even surpassed that of father and son. Father and son were only karma from birth. Master and disciple formed karma from pursuing the Tao. Jiang Juesher immediately knelt and kowtowed. "Greetings, master." Everything happened smoothly. Hanju received his favorability. Hanju said, "Since you're my disciple, I'll teach you a mystical power. This mystical power is enough to let you dominate the chaos." Jiang Juesher was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly thanked him. Hanju began to preach the Tao, naturally teaching the divine might great heaven palm. The lecture ended 100 years later. Jiang Juesher opened his eyes and smiled. Liu Bei seemed to sense something. He opened his eyes and saw his smile. He couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" "I've acknowledged that senior as my master," Jiang Juesher said softly. He was extremely excited. What a domineering divine might great heaven palm. Destroy everything. Simple and fierce. They could skip all the fancy mystical powers if they cultivate it to the extreme. No matter how many mystical powers one had, they would destroy them with a palm. Jiang Juesher was even more respectful towards Hanju. Liu Bei smiled. "Congratulations." Jiang Juesher smiled. "We're fellow disciples from now on." "Senior." Liu Bei shook his head. "We're considered fellow sect members but not fellow disciples." "Why?" "To be honest, I'm actually the senior's clone. He's the main body. In terms of seniority, I'm also a generation older than you." "Clone?" Jiang Juesher widened his eyes and looked at him with a completely different gaze. Liu Bei was secretly pleased. He had endured for a long time and could finally posture. Jiang Juesher sighed. "I see. It's all because of master's favor." He was still very touched when he thought about it. In order to accept him, his master had first given him a favor, and only accepted him after he was willing to acknowledge him as his master. Such magnanimity was admirable. He couldn't help but ask, "Who is my master?" Liu Bei was silent. At this moment, Hanju's voice entered his ears, allowing him to reveal his identity. "Heavenly Tao, divine might, heavenly sage. Have you heard of him?" Jiang Juesher was moved. Divine might, heavenly sage. This name was like thunder. Especially to the heavenly Tao life forms, it was even more of a legend. Jiang Juesher also admired the divine might, heavenly sage, but the difference between the two was too great. He knew that he couldn't come into contact with him. He recalled something else. One of the initiators of the chaotic assembly was the divine might, heavenly sage. His heart burned. In other words, he could freely display his talent in the chaotic assembly and not be afraid of being plotted against. Who would dare to hurt him in the endless chaos with the divine might, heavenly sage protecting him? Jiang Juesher was touched. He had felt that his potential was enough to match his master. But his master was the divine might, heavenly sage. So it was different. This was the strongest person in the chaos. At least, that was what most cultivators thought. How could such an expert lack prodigies as disciples? Jiang Juesher took a deep breath, and his eyes became firm. He couldn't embarrass the divine might, heavenly sage. Becoming one of the 10 absolutes of the chaos was necessary. He still had to try his best to fight for the eternal peak of the chaos. Time passed quickly. Hundreds of thousands of years later, detected that you are 6 million years old, and your life has taken a step forward. You have the following choices. 1. Exit seclusion immediately, and open the primordial chaos in the chaos. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a primordial fragment, and a creation spirit stone. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner, and stay away from trouble. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a primordial fragment, and a creation spirit stone. Hanju opened his eyes. There was no difference in the reward this time. His heart wouldn't ache no matter the choice he made. He immediately chose the second option. He now had 8 primordial fragments. In other words, he would be able to perform a primordial chaos great creation in 1,000,000 years. Hanju was excited. Son, you're about to be born. Hanju suddenly thought that his son might still have a chance to participate in the chaotic assembly. There were still 9,000,000 years until the assembly. His son had 8,000,000 years to catch up. No one had seen a true primordial fiend celestial other than Hanju in this world. He might not be exposed as long as his son was not arrogant. Hanju thought of the future that he had deduced previously. It seemed difficult not to become arrogant. Forget it, he would see in the future. Anyway, Hanju had a safe card to play with Jiang Juesher around. He took out the creation spirit stone and fused it with a ball of fiend celestial qi before continuing to cultivate. He prepared to break through in the next 1,000,000 years. 1,000,000 years wouldn't be long as he entered seclusion for a long time. Time passed quickly. Under the blue sky, on the stone platform, the 5 divine punishers stood in front of the ultimate god of punishment. Han Tuo reported the information about the ancient desolate. After he finished speaking, the ultimate god of punishment asked casually. In other words, there's an existence that surpasses the great Tao sage realm hidden in the ancient desolate, and you don't know his identity? Han Tuo's expression darkened. That's right. If not for us being in the great Tao realm, we probably wouldn't have been able to come out. A great Tao sage called Divine Lord Peacock was forcefully suppressed by that ancient existence and said that he wanted his will to sink there forever. The ultimate god of punishment fell into deep thought. Etian said, "Exalted God, don't ask us to go to the ancient desolate anymore. That place is even more terrifying than the bottom of the chaos. There are too many Tao devils." The ultimate god of punishment frowned and asked, "Tao devils?" Etian nodded. "It feels like the ancient desolate has more living beings than the heavenly Tao. Damn it, I don't know where they came from." Chapter 898 Rushing to 7,000,000 years old. Chapter 898 Rushing to 7,000,000 years old. Speaking of which, the Tao devils are indeed worth our attention. Some powerful Tao devils are even comparable to great Tao sages. The weakest is at the immortal emperor realm, Han Tuo muttered. The other 3 divine punishers nodded. Clearly, they had suffered greatly from the Tao devils. The ultimate god of punishment thought for a moment and said, "That's all. All of you can go and prepare for the chaotic assembly. Someone must definitely enter the chaotic 10 absolutes at this meeting. Understand?" The 5 divine punishers bowed. The ultimate god of punishment waved his sleeve, and the 5 divine punishers immediately retreated. The ultimate god's face turned cold after they left. "Tao devil, I didn't expect you to still be alive. You're indeed making a comeback." The ultimate god of punishment muttered to himself, his eyes filled with hatred. He closed his eyes and continued cultivating. The thing he was most concerned about now was still the chaotic assembly. This event had to be done well. This would be the first step to changing the chaos. The 5 divine punishers were only for supervision. He still had to make a huge move if he wanted to truly change the chaos. In the welcoming sacred palace, the foolish sword sage and sect master Tianju stared at Azure Heaven Mystic. Azure Heaven Mystic became a heavenly Tao sage hundreds of thousands of years ago. After that, he was like a wild horse that had lost its reins. He couldn't stop and cultivated crazily. Now he had already reached the late-stage primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortal realm. At this moment, Azure Heaven Mystic was breaking through to the perfected realm. Sect Master Tianju sighed. "The younger generation will surpass us in time. The heavenly Tao will definitely achieve something in the chaotic assembly." Visit Maibo X novel. Com to read please. The foolish sword sage said. This kid's potential is indeed impressive. It's not difficult for him to enter the chaotic 10 absolutes. As for the eternal peak of the chaotic era, it's hard to say. Sect Master Tianju asked in surprise. The heavenly Tao is the most enlightened in the chaos. It's rare for geniuses in the chaos to have an environment as blessed as the heavenly Tao. Foolish sword sage shook his head. Sometimes potential is enough. No matter how good the environment of the heavenly Tao is, it can't compare to a great Tao. Sect Master Tianju was silent. Although I often brag about my talent, I've encountered many existences who are more outstanding than me on my path of growth. It's just that they died young, and I survived. It's easier for geniuses to grow now that the chaos is peaceful. Perhaps an existence that can shock the world will emerge. Azure Heaven Mystic is one of them, but it's hard to say that he's the most outstanding. The foolish sword sage sighed. There was something he did not say. For example, the divine might heavenly sage. Azure Heaven Mystic's cultivation speed was fast, but that was only his cultivation talent. His combat talent was also important. Just like the divine might heavenly sage, he felt that no matter how many enemies came in the same realm, they were not his match. The foolish sword sage would never forget the scene of Hanju killing 20,000 divine authority generals with a single strike. Sect Master Tianju nodded. That makes sense. However, being able to become one of the chaotic 10 absolutes can be considered bringing honor to the heavenly Tao. The foolish sword sage nodded. Azure Heaven Mystic was still in the midst of an epiphany and did not hear their conversation. Even in the midst of breaking through, Azure Heaven Mystic still had a proud expression and was in high spirits. This was only a start. Not only the heavenly Tao, but the entire chaos had begun to prepare for the chaotic assembly. The chaotic assembly had already become the most widespread topic in the chaos, under the push of all the great Tao divine spirits. The 10 absolutes, and the eternal peak of the chaos, were already famous before they were even born. In the mysterious world, mist filled the air. Divine Lord Peacock sat in front of a stone tablet. Mountains could be seen in all directions. They were like giant demons under the cover of the fog. At this moment, Divine Lord Peacock slowly opened his eyes and said, "Old thing, how long are you going to imprison me? Let me tell you, I have a backer." His gaze landed on the stone tablet in front of him. This stone tablet was like dead wood. It was bleeding and looked terrifying. No one answered him. Divine Lord Peacock was angry, but he couldn't move and could only give up. He had thought of asking the Dark Forbidden Lord for help again, but he did not dare when he thought of how the Dark Forbidden Lord was already very disappointed in him. The Dark Forbidden Lord wanted him to cultivate well. In order to contribute and be in danger, he had to trouble the Dark Forbidden Lord. Thinking of this, Divine Lord Peacock was even more furious and hated his incompetence. He suddenly realized that it was not unreasonable for him to waste his life. Previously, he had been stuck before the Great Tao realm. His potential was strong, but he had wasted too much time. The more Divine Lord Peacock thought about it, the more depressed he became. He was really useless. No, I can't do this. Divine Lord Peacock adjusted his state of mind. His gaze became firm when he opened his eyes again. Time passed. Universe of Stars, third Tao field. Under the old tree, Han Qinger stretched lazily and opened her eyes. "Mother, how many years has it been?" Qingwaner opened her eyes and said, "You've been in seclusion for almost 100,000 years, right?" Han Qinger shook her head. "I'm asking how long father has been in seclusion." She had never left the temple ever since Hanju taught her the divine might Great Heaven Palm. She would have been worried if not for the fact that she had seen him several times. "I don't know either. It might have been 1,000,000 years." Qingwaner shook her head. She had already attained the primordial chaos Tao fruit after so many years. As time passed, she became used to such a cultivation life. She could understand Hanju now. Time really lost its meaning after reaching the sage realm. Han Qinger muttered, "What happened this time? Father used to be in seclusion for 100,000 years. Why didn't he exit seclusion after so long? Did something happen?" Qingwaner asked nervously, "What did your father tell you?" "No, I'm just guessing. Don't worry, mother. Nothing will happen to father. I'm talking about what happened. My father is so powerful, he'll definitely be fine. I'm just curious why he's in seclusion for so long. Perhaps he's about to break through?" Han Qinger consoled her. She knew her father's identity. He was the strongest in the chaos. Qingwaner could only relax. The mother and daughter quickly entered cultivation again. At the same time, in the Taoist temple, Hanju was still immersed in cultivation. He had never been in seclusion for so long. The primordial world had already expanded several times. embryonic figures, had already formed in the fiend celestial chi. At this rate, Hanju wouldn't need creation spirit stones in the future to create fiend celestials anymore. The chaotic fiend celestial transformed from the creation spirit stone, obtained on his 6 millionth birthday, was still in the primordial world. Hanju slowly opened his eyes. His cultivation level had increased greatly, but there was still time to break through. He discovered that only 800,000 years had passed. He was still a distance away from his 7 millionth birthday. Son, you can come out in another 200,000 years, Hanju muttered to himself. He was feeling touched. He was really fighting for his son. He checked his interpersonal relationships. His friends were still around, which meant that they were fine. He continued to cultivate in seclusion and waited for the 7 millionth birthday. The system displayed his origin lifespan. It was useless even if he used the rules of time to speed up the time in the Taoist temple. Therefore, he could only endure it. Chapter 899 Primordial Chaos Great Creation. Chapter 899 Primordial Chaos Great Creation. 10,000 years was a long time for most cultivators, but not for Hanju. Time passed quickly. 3 lines of words suddenly appeared in front of him. Detected that you are 7 million years old, and your life has taken another step forward. You have the following choices. 1. Exit seclusion immediately and head to the blank domain outside the chaos to open the primordial chaos. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a primordial fragment, a creation spirit stone, and a heavenly Tao spirit stone. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and stay away from trouble. You can obtain a great Tao fragment, a primordial fragment, and a creation spirit stone. Hanju heaved a sigh of relief. He had been worried that the system would stop him and deliberately not give him the primordial fragment. Fortunately, he had been overthinking. The first option changed this time. It was to head to the blank domain to create the primordial chaos. There were no living beings in the blank domain. It was equivalent to death. Hanju was worried that the Tao creators were hiding in the blank domain, so he still didn't dare to go there. Will the Tao creators notice if I go to the blank domain to create the primordial chaos? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Visit myb0xnovel.com to read, please. Yes. Hanju immediately chose the second option. He first took out the creation spirit stone and fused it with a ball of fiend celestial chi. Then, he teleported to the second Tao field and released the chaotic fiend celestial he had created previously and called Morong Chi to receive him. Master, you're finally here. I thought you had forgotten about us. Tao Comprehension Sword curled her lips and pretended to be aggrieved after Morong Chi left. Hanju patted her head and smiled. How can that be? I'm just busy cultivating. As for you, why is the difference between you and Li Yao getting greater and greater? Tao Comprehension Sword's pretty face immediately collapsed. She said helplessly, how can I compare to Sister Li Yao? She's too abnormal, just like you. No, she has too much cultivation determination. Hanju's gaze landed on Li Yao. She was sitting on a mat and staring at him. Perhaps it was his imagination, but he felt a hint of gentleness in Li Yao's eyes. Hanju chatted with them for a while before quickly returning to the main Tao field. Nothing else mattered. The most important thing now was to increase his bloodline. He sat on the 36th grade reincarnation world destruction Black Lotus and took out 9 primordial fragments. The 9 primordial fragments circled in the air like great Tao fragments and began to fuse on their own. Purple light flickered, causing the light and darkness in the temple to change. Hanju waited nervously. Whoosh! A slight explosion sounded. The 9 primordial fragments fused into one and collided between Hanju's eyebrows. In an instant, his consciousness arrived in a purple space. Endless nebulous primordial chi filled the surroundings. Please choose the primordial chaos great creation you want. This line of words appeared in front of Hanju. It asked him to choose, but there was no choice given. No choice was the best choice. I want my bloodline to evolve. A line of words appeared in front of him. Your bloodline is the stellar primordial body. You are a primordial fiend celestial, and will evolve into an unknown bloodline. Do you want to continue? There might be danger since it was the unknown? Hanju asked in his mind. Will I suffer a backlash? The primordial chaos great creation is the supreme power of creation. There will be no side effects. Then continue. Hanju was filled with anticipation. The moment he made a decision, the surrounding purple space suddenly shrank. He felt his will explode, and his consciousness fell into chaos. It was like a dream. Hanju dreamed that he was born, and moved forward in a confusing place. There was no beginning or end. In the dream, he kept moving forward and never stopped. At the same time, the ground of the third Dao field shook violently. A torrent of spirit qi entered Hanju's body. Not only the third Dao field, but the spirit qi and connate qi of the main Dao field, and the second Dao field were also all extracted and poured into his body. In the universe of stars, countless stars trembled, startling Jiang Juesher and Liu Bei, who were cultivating. What's going on? Are there enemies? Jiang Juesher asked in a low voice, but his sage sense could not capture any other aura. Liu Bei noticed that the commotion came from the third Dao field. He immediately knew what was going on. Perhaps your master is breaking through. Don't worry. Jiang Juesher asked in surprise. He's already the strongest in the chaos. He can still break through. Why do you think he accepted you? Is it really because of your talent? No, he just admires your cultivation attitude. Like him, you spent most of your life cultivating and seldom went out to adventure. It felt like seeing his other self when he saw you. Do you get it? Liu Bei said seriously. Jiang Juesher was enlightened and felt deep veneration for Hanju. He asked himself, could I still cultivate diligently if I was the strongest in the chaos? Heavenly Tao, 33rd Heaven. The sages gathered in the Universal Hall. Divine Might Buddha asked anxiously, what's going on? The spirit qi of the entire Heavenly Tao is being absorbed. The other sages also said that it was not only spirit qi. Even the rules of the Heavenly Tao and the River of Destiny were fluctuating, as if they would collapse at any moment. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du stared at the immortal world and suddenly said, the commotion came from the 100-peak immortal river. It should be related to the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. Everyone don't panic. Divine Might Heavenly Sage. The sages instantly quietened down, and the worry in their hearts vanished. Long Hao smiled proudly. My master must be breaking through, or creating a mystical power. No matter what, the stronger my master is, the safer the Heavenly Tao will be. The sages nodded. They would definitely suspect the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's ambitions if it was in the past. However, it was too easy for him to take control after so many tribulations. However, he had never taken the initiative to dominate. Although there were many geniuses of the hidden sect in the sage circle, these geniuses were indeed powerful. The Divine Might Heavenly Sage did not say that he had to join the hidden sect to attain the Tao. Compared to the Heavenly Tao ruled by the Tao ancestor in the past, the current Heavenly Tao was too free for sages. There were no rules, and it was not so obvious to scheme. The sages had to work hard for the Heavenly Tao's development. Azure Heaven Mystic couldn't help but ask, what is Divine Might Heavenly Sage's realm? Great Tao Sage. The old school sages laughed. Azure Heaven Mystic was offended and said angrily, I'm a new sage. You don't let me go to the chaos, so I naturally don't understand. The foolish sword sage said, I'm an existence that surpasses the great Tao Sage realm, and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage can easily kill me. What realm do you think he is at? Azure Heaven Mystic was stunned. He wasn't the only one. The other sages were also shocked. This was the first time the foolish sword sage had revealed his cultivation level, surpassing the great Tao Sage realm. Previously, the sages had always thought that the Divine Might Heavenly Sage, the foolish sword sage, Red Fate, and great sage Void Soul were all great Tao sages, and that there was just a difference in strength between them. They didn't expect that there was a realm above the great Tao Sage realm. On the other side, in the Taoist temple of the third Tao field, Hanju slowly opened his eyes. The universe of stars and the Heavenly Tao returned to normal. At this moment, his entire body emitted a dense purple light. His eyes were cold and his black hair fluttered, making him look otherworldly. Chapter 900 Ultimate Origin Fiend Celestial. Chapter 900 Ultimate Origin Fiend Celestial in the Purple Light. Hanju slowly looked up. He could feel his transformation. His body was sublimating. An unprecedented power was tempering his muscles and bones. The primordial world in the depths of his soul expanded crazily and was unstoppable. Gradually, Hanju's skin turned purple. His black hair lost its color, and only wisps of white light swayed. His eyes became strange, like two universes with stars. Hanju felt the changes in his body. He was extremely happy and didn't feel any pain. This was an extreme experience. It was unprecedentedly wonderful, surpassing all joy. His will jumped above the chaos and stood higher than before, looking down at the entire chaos. The chaos became tiny. At first glance, the chaos was surrounded by endless blankness. It was like an ink dot on a piece of white paper, and this white paper was endless. At this moment, the black dot in the chaos began to change. It quickly expanded as if time had accelerated. When the chaos reached a certain size, it suddenly shattered and transformed into countless purple fragments that spread throughout the blank domain. These purple fragments scattered like purple mist and quickly burned through the entire blank domain. Could this be the primordial chaos? Was everything just a manifestation of space-time reversal? After the purple mist filled the blank domain, the entire primordial chaos began to shrink. Even the blank domain no longer existed. Soon, the primordial chaos was as big as before. It shrank into chaos, like a drop of purple ink, and the surroundings were absolute darkness. Nothingness. Visit myb0xnovel.com to read, please. How was the primordial chaos born? This thought appeared in Hanju's mind, and he began to look forward to the next change. The primordial chaos was still shrinking. After a long time, it finally stopped shrinking, but Hanju was shocked. The primordial chaos was actually formed by a human head. It was a hairless purple head with 9 eyes. Its eyes were empty, and it had no nose or mouth. What was that? Hanju was curious. Then, everything in front of him shattered. His consciousness returned to reality. His physical transformation ended. Your stellar primordial body has been upgraded to the Extreme Tao Ultimate Origin Body. Extreme Tao Ultimate Origin Body? Hanju checked his attributes list and discovered that the words Primordial Fiend Celestial had become the Ultimate Origin Fiend Celestial. Above the primordial chaos was the Ultimate Origin. Hanju was secretly puzzled. Wasn't this a brand new physique? Why couldn't he name it personally? I want to know if there was an Ultimate Origin Fiend Celestial in the past. Hanju asked in his mind. No, it has never appeared. It's just that an existence has raised a hypothesis regarding it. The system evolved and created the physique based on this hypothesis. So it's called the Ultimate Origin Fiend Celestial. Who made the hypothesis? The previous Primordial Fiend Celestial. Hanju was enlightened. The previous Primordial Fiend Celestial had also wanted to break through the limits, but its mystical power was no match for fate, and it still failed. Was no from the looks of it. The system was related to the previous Primordial Fiend Celestial. Could the system be created by the previous Primordial Fiend Celestial? Hanju continued to ask in his mind. No. How deep was the system's background? Hanju could only suppress his confusion. He couldn't ask the system anyway. He began to comprehend the changes in his body. The supreme power had transformed into another even stronger power, and was temporarily determined to be the ultimate origin power. His body was condensed from the power of the final essence, and had already exceeded the definition of the body. His soul was no longer single. He discovered that he could easily create countless souls that could be controlled by his will. The primordial world in the depths of his soul was 100 times larger than before. It was contained in the depths of his will, and not his soul space. The purple light on Hanju's body began to change, and finally turned into a red light. The red light shrank, and he quickly returned to his original appearance. However, strange red patterns appeared on his forehead. His pupils were bright red, and his white hair fell off. A shrunken sea of stars appeared above his head. It was actually the miniature version of the primordial world. Bald. I became a Buddha. Hanju didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With a thought, black hair grew out of his head, and the red patterns on his forehead faded. Only the color of his pupils couldn't change. His eyes could release the ultimate origin power. His strength would decrease greatly once he closed his eyes. He naturally wouldn't hide them in order to maintain his peak state. Just like that, Hanju looked no different from before, but his pupils had changed color. Excited, he entered the simulation trial and started the challenge. 25,000 Great Tao Supreme Realm Foolish Sword Sages. Instant kill. 30,000 insta-kill. 30,000 insta-kill. 50,000 insta-kill. Hanju kept increasing the number of Foolish Sword Sages. He used the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm to activate the ultimate origin power and directly destroyed all enemies. The ultimate origin power was so domineering, it completely released the power of the Divine Might Great Heaven Palm. 80,000 Foolish Sword Sages were insta-killed. 100,000 Foolish Sword Sages were insta-killed. Awesome. Hanju was filled with heroism. He used his full strength every time he waved his palm. It was satisfying, and the endless power of ultimate essence crushed everything. 100,000 Foolish Sword Sages was not the limit. Hanju wanted to continue, but he felt something and suddenly stood up, teleporting to the main Dao field. He followed Xing Hongxian to her Taoist temple. At this moment, Xing Hongxian was holding her abdomen. It was growing larger and was clearly throbbing. Hanju felt a strong vitality. It was his son. His son was finally about to be born now that he was no longer the primordial fiend celestial. Xing Hongxian was originally very flustered, but she immediately felt at ease when she saw Hanju. "Husband, I think I'm about to give birth," Xing Hongxian said softly with a trembling voice. She was already a sage and should not be afraid, but this kid's vitality was really exuberant. He was still accumulating a force that was enough to tear her apart. How could she not panic? Hanju came in front of her and placed his hand on her belly. He wrapped the fetus with the ultimate origin power to prevent the fetus power from injuring its mother. This kid. Hanju was suddenly moved. He discovered that the fetus was becoming stronger crazily and even wanted to absorb his ultimate origin power. However, how could his ultimate origin power be absorbed by the primordial fiend celestial? Hanju had no choice but to weaken his strength and convert a portion of the ultimate origin power into ordinary supreme power for his son to absorb. At the same time, in the third Dao field, under the old tree, Han Qing'er suddenly clutched her chest and frowned. Qingwana noticed her abnormality and asked, "Qing'er, what's wrong?" "Mother, I feel suffocated for some reason. I feel like a calamity is coming," Han Qing'er said carefully, her face turning pale. She was not the only one. In the depths of the chaos, Han Tua, who was cultivating, opened his eyes. His face was also pale. However, unlike Han Qing'er, he already knew of his younger brother's existence. He first thought of his younger brother whom he had never met. "What's that kid doing now?" Han Tua muttered to himself. Fortunately, Etian was not at his side. Otherwise that fellow would start nagging again. On the other side, Heavenly Dao Buzhou Palace. Han Yu opened his eyes and clutched his chest. Beside him, a woman in green was meditating. Sensing his heavy breathing, she opened her eyes and looked at him. "Senior, what's wrong?" the woman in green asked in confusion. Han Yu was a sage, after all, so she didn't expect him to feel unwell. Chapter 901 Pioneer Born as Freedom. Chapter 901 Pioneer. Born as Freedom. Nothing. I'm just feeling uneasy. Han Yu replied casually and put down his hand. He suppressed his discomfort. He was puzzled. Why was this happening? He could only wait uneasily. At this moment, he didn't know who to ask for help. Besides, there was no fatal danger. At the same time, in the 100-peak Immortal River, Hanju was still helping Xing Hongxian give birth. Her abdomen was already the size of a normal 10-month pregnancy. It was still beating. The fetus was very lively. Every time it beat, it would cause thunder to rumble. It appeared out of thin air and was deafening. Xing Hongxian was surprised. She asked excitedly, "Our son must be impressive. This commotion feels like it's going to burst my stomach." Hanju was speechless. What was this? Xing Hongxian was relieved because of his help, and she even began to look forward to her son's potential. Hanju kept transforming ultimate origin power into supreme power for his son to absorb. It was equivalent to imparting strength. This kid's primordial physique was indeed impressive. Hanju's stellar primordial body was not so domineering. The stellar primordial body was mainly to create the primordial world. Could it be that his son's physique was to absorb? Hanju didn't know and was looking forward to it. Please read on website, myboxin0vl. Calm husband, what do you think our son's name should be? Yes, let's call him Han Huang. It means pioneer. Pioneer? Of what? Xing Hongxian asked curiously. It was naturally the pioneer, who would open the primordial chaos. However, Hanju couldn't say it directly. He only said, it means he'll explore the world. Xing Hongxian was enlightened. This name doesn't sound good, but the meaning is all right. I'll listen to you. At this point, his youngest son had a new name, Han Huang. As Han Huang continued to absorb the supreme power, the providence cloud at the top of the heavenly Tao surged violently. It was terrifying, as if a calamity had descended. The sages gathered in the universal hall. They were all flustered. The previous phenomenon had just ended when a new one appeared. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du had no choice but to send a voice transmission to Hanju. Heavenly Sage, sorry to disturb you. The heavenly Tao is abnormal. You have to see what happened. Hanju replied, don't panic. I'm just creating a mystical power. It won't endanger the heavenly Tao. Hearing this, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly told the other sages about this. The sages were relieved. The foolish sword sage frowned. He was really creating a mystical power. No, he couldn't allow him to pull further apart. The foolish sword sage immediately disappeared and returned to his Tao field to cultivate. He seemed to be convinced by Hanju, but he had always had the ambition to surpass him. Days passed. The providence at the top of the heavenly Tao kept surging. Fortunately, it did not affect the myriad worlds. Xing Hongxian was finally about to give birth after 10 months. Hanju was personally responsible for delivering the baby. The process was not difficult. Soon, Han Huang was born. A golden light flashed in Hanju's arms. In the golden light was a fetus. Its body was golden, and its eyes were like purple crystals. Its facial features were exquisite, but it looked quite strange overall. Wah! A loud cry sounded like a thunderclap. The entire heavenly Tao, and even the living beings in the chaotic domain controlled by the divine robe Taoists could hear it. Hanju was shocked. Why was he crying so loudly? He hurriedly used the ultimate origin power to isolate the 100-peak immortal river. A golden light pierced through the Taoist temple, through the array formation of the Tao field, and shot into the sky. It pierced through the 33rd heaven, and broke through the top of the heavenly Tao. It rushed all the way up, as if it wanted to break through the peak of the chaos. Hanju was helpless. He couldn't stop this kid. 3 Pure Sacred World. The 3 pure sages were discussing the Tao when they were interrupted by Han Huang's cries. They had just stopped when the cries stopped. The crying just now. The heavenly sect master narrowed his eyes. Laozi counted with his fingers and said, a prodigy has appeared in the heavenly Tao. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning asked curiously, what prodigy? How can the cries reach here? From the sound, he's just born? That's right. He was just born. His cultivation level, Laozi frowned. After a pause he continued, he's born as freedom. It's unprecedented. Born as freedom. The heavenly sect master and the heavenly lord of primordial beginning were moved. In the mysterious palace, the divine robe Taoist, who was cultivating, opened his eyes and frowned at the heavenly Tao. Born as freedom. The heavenly Tao actually has such a figure? Could it be master's doing? The divine robe Taoist was shocked at first, but then pleasantly surprised. Such a prodigy would definitely achieve good results in the chaotic assembly. At that time, he would be proud if he said it. After all, the heavenly Tao was in his domain. He was filled with admiration for Hanju. As expected of master, he made up his mind to meet that new prodigy in the future and build a good relationship with him in advance. On the other side, in a dark domain, the evil heavenly emperor was meditating. In front of him was the formless transcendent deity shining with a strong light. The heavenly Tao has changed. Someone was born as freedom. An impressive existence is about to appear. The formless transcendent God suddenly said, startling the evil heavenly emperor. This place was too far from the heavenly Tao. The evil heavenly emperor did not hear Han Huang's cries. You mean, the evil heavenly emperor asked carefully. The formless transcendent deity replied, a newborn fetus. He was born as freedom, a feat that has never been seen since ancient times. He's Hanju's son. Born as freedom. Hanju's son. The evil heavenly emperor was shocked. Han Tuo's potential had already stunned him. He didn't expect Hanju to give birth to an even more exaggerated prodigy. Born as freedom. How high was the upper limit? The evil heavenly emperor's heart beat faster and his eyes burned. He wanted to help Hanju raise his child. The formless transcendent deity added, this child will change the chaos. I wonder what kind of change it will be. The evil heavenly emperor said, I'll teach him personally. Hehe, you want to teach him? That might not be the case. Why do you say that? He's born as freedom. The way he looks at everything will be different from all living beings. His birth destined the difference between his extraordinariness and all living beings. If there is a natural-born God, it will be him. No existence has been born as freedom since ancient times. The formless transcendent deity's words caused the evil heavenly emperor to fall into deep thought. In the 100-peak immortal river, the golden light dissipated. The 10 million disciples were still shocked and discussing curiously. Xian Qingjun, Fairy Xixian, and Chang Yue rushed over. Hanju didn't ignore them and let them in. The three women were surprised to see the baby in his arms. Was the commotion caused by this child? Let me hug him. Chang Yue said excitedly. Hanju shook his head. No, this kid is already a freedom sage. He can easily hurt you. Freedom sage. The three women were stunned. This child was far stronger than them from the moment he was born? They were all dumbfounded. At this moment, Xing Hongxian tidied her clothes and walked over. She stared at Han Huang and frowned. Why are his eyes so ugly? The purple eyes looked strange. As if sensing his mother's disdain, Han Huang's eyes quickly returned to white with black pupils. His skin also returned to the appearance of a normal human child, but it was slightly pale and immediately became pink and cute. Chapter 902 Strange Gaze. Chapter 902 Strange Gaze. Wow. He can understand you. Chang Yue shouted in surprise, looking at Han Huang with fondness. This kid was indeed cute. As if understanding Chang Yue's words, Han Huang actually flew out of Hanju's arms. Unfortunately, he grabbed his foot and pulled him back. Han Huang frowned and reached out to grab him. This kid is quite fierce. Xian Qingjun laughed. Hanju slapped Han Huang's butt loudly. He could sense that Han Huang's intelligence was not high. It was at most like a 2 or 3-year-old. However, his physical talent was high, and he could instinctively control the changes. Han Huang didn't cry after being beaten by him. Instead, he stared at him with a very angry expression. Hanju was amused and slapped him again. This kid still didn't cry after 10 consecutive slaps. He still stared at him. Oh my, what are you doing? Xing Hongxian took Han Huang and glared at him. Xian Qingjun and the other two also started to blame him. Hanju was helpless and didn't dare to refute. Please read on website. myboxin0vl. Xian Qingjun and the other two left after playing with the baby for a while. Hanju brought Xing Hongxian and her son to the third Dao field to see Qingwaner and Han Qing'er. My second brother was born? Han Qing'er shouted in surprise. Then, she went in front of Hanju and looked at the swaddled Han Huang. Her eyes instantly lit up, and she reached out to take him. Qingwaner held Xing Hongshuan's arm and asked about the delivery. Hanju reminded her, be careful. Your second brother is a freedom sage. He might hurt you. What? Freedom? Wasn't he just born? Han Qing'er was shocked. The hand holding the swaddle trembled. After all, it has been nurtured for so many years. But this is, Han Qing'er couldn't accept it. She had always thought that she was extremely talented, but she was simply inferior compared to little second. Han Huang seemed to be amused by her expression. He chuckled and raised his two small hands, wanting to scratch her face. Han Qing'er could only forcefully calm down upon seeing how cute he was. She began to tease Han Huang. Qing Wan'er exclaimed, "Born as freedom. He should be the number one in the chaos, right?" Xing Hongxian smiled. "Probably. Speaking of which, my cultivation level is also thanks to him." During the period when Han Huang was about to be born, her cultivation level also increased rapidly. Sister is really lucky. No, Qing'er is so obedient. Although this kid is talented, he will definitely be a restless person in the future. Bring him over if you have nothing to do in the future. I think Qing'er likes him very much. I'll stay here and see this kid grow up. That's great. Han Ju ignored the two women's conversation and looked at Han Huang. Han Qing'er raised him in the air and made him laugh even more. The newly born Han Huang was already like a 2-year-old. He looked innocent, but Han Ju felt that this kid was strange. Not to mention the future he saw in the illusion, he didn't cry when Han Ju hit him earlier. Instead, he stared at him without fear. That gaze was something. This kid would probably scare others until their legs went weak when he grew up. Han Ju thought silently. He decided to accompany Han Huang as he grew up. He wouldn't cultivate first. Anyway, 20 years was the blink of an eye for him. Qing Wan'er brought Han Huang to the other disciples to play. In the end, not long after, Han Huang accidentally injured a disciple. Fortunately, Han Ju was there. Otherwise, that disciple would have been slapped until his soul dissipated. Han Ju was even more surprised. Could it be that this kid could already tell his family apart? Facing Han Qing'er, he was like an ordinary baby. Facing other disciples, his movements were heavy, and he subconsciously wanted to use his connate dermic powers. Han Qing'er was shocked by Han Huang's attack, and did not know what to do. Han Ju raised his hand and sucked Han Huang over. Han Huang bared his fangs and brandished his claws. He was very dissatisfied to be grabbed by Han Ju after returning to his arms. Xing Hongxian walked over and frowned. "Husband, you have to discipline this kid well." She had also seen the scene just now. If not for her son, she would probably be as shocked as Han Qing'er. Han Ju said, "I know." He looked around at the nearby disciples. All of them looked terrified and did not dare to approach. Han Ju was helpless. Indeed, this kid was really a little overlord. It was impossible for all children to be gentle towards him. Just like that, Han Ju began to personally take care of Han Huang. Xing Hongxian pulled Qing Wan'er to the side of Han Ju's Taoist temple and prepared to open a new Taoist temple. She couldn't always cultivate under the tree. In any case, Xing Hongxian did not like that. Time passed quickly. 2 years passed in a flash. Han Ju had always been staring at Han Huang, afraid that this kid would hurt someone. He did not restrain Han Huang, and usually let Han Qing'er play with him. After 2 years, Han Huang looked to be 3 or 4 years old. He spoke in human language, and his intelligence had reached the 10-year-old mark. He could communicate normally. On this day, Han Huang and Han Qing'er were under the old tree. Han Qing'er recounted what she had seen in the immortal world. Han Huang lay in front of her, holding his cheeks with both hands and shaking his legs. The 2-year-old Han Huang wore a golden silk white robe. His pupils were purple, and he was cute and divine. After growing up, he saw that Han Ju's pupils were red, so he no longer hid his purple eyes. Han Huang was puzzled upon hearing the story. "Qing'er, why does that person want revenge?" Han Huang asked. Han Qing'er smiled. "If someone kills me and our parents, would you want to kill that person?" Han Huang tilted his head and said, "How can anyone kill you guys?" Han Qing'er was stunned. "What if? That's not possible." "Why?" "Because I will protect you. There are many people stronger than you in the chaos. Besides, you can't stay with us forever. Then, I'll kill all the chaotic life forms. This way no one can kill you." "You." Han Qing'er was so angry that she raised her hand to hit him. However, on second thought, he was the elder brother. How could a younger sister hit her elder brother? She then said, "You already want to kill without grudges, let alone him who has a blood feud." "No, he's not worthy." "Why not? He's so weak. Why does he want to kill someone stronger than him, and want others to help?" "What nonsense are you saying? Should the weak be bullied by the strong?" "What else?" "Hee. Then what if you're bullied by stronger people?" "No, no one can bully me." Han Qing'er almost died of anger. This kid was asking for a beating and had a problem with his brain. At this moment, Hanju walked over and said, "Huanger, are you bullying your sister again?" Han Huang hurriedly jumped up and scratched his head. "No way. How can I bully her? She's the one who bullied me." He was most afraid of his father, because only he dared to hit him. He couldn't fight back, and it hurt every time. Chapter 903 Han Huang's Difference, Lonely Fiend Celestial. Chapter 903 Han Huang's Difference, Lonely Fiend Celestial. I bullied you? You're so powerful. Who dares to bully you? Han Qinger snorted. She really had no choice when it came to this brother of hers. It was always very infuriating when they interacted. However, Han Huang would always be the first to look for her after the two of them fell out. He would stare at her seriously, making her heart soften easily. They were more like elder sister and younger brother. Hanju picked Han Huang up. "What are you doing? Let go of me." Han Huang struggled with all his might. He waved his hands and wanted to resist, but his arms were too short, and he couldn't touch Hanju. He had freedom dermic powers, but he didn't know how to use a mystical power. Hanju said, "You brat, don't always bully your sister. You even said that you wanted to protect us. You don't even dare to admit that you bullied her." Han Huang shouted, "I'm not bullying her. I'm just chatting with her normally. I'm saying what's on my mind. I'm not scolding her. How is that bullying? Aren't we talking about others?" Han Qinger said angrily, "Father, this kid actually wants to slaughter all the living beings in the chaos. He thinks that he's born superior to others. Don't you think it's infuriating?" Han Huang said aggrievedly, "What's wrong with that? I think the disciples in the Tao field are all very weak. Am I not just a few levels higher than them? It's already like this here. Could it be that the living beings of the chaos are stronger than me?" Han Qinger choked. He was born as freedom. Who could compare to him? She suddenly realized something. Please read on website. myboxin0vl.com. She really couldn't think of Han Huang as a mortal or an immortal. Han Qinger couldn't help but feel tiny as she looked at his expression. Hanju carried Han Huang and asked, "Do you want to go to the immortal world?" Han Huang's eyes lit up. He hurriedly nodded. Yes, father. Bring me there." Han Qinger was also interested and looked at him expectantly. Hanju waved his sleeve and brought the siblings back to the main Tao field. He sealed Han Huang and Han Qinger's cultivation levels. A freedom sage couldn't enter the heavenly Tao. Then, he entered the immortal world with his soul fragment. His transformation methods were unfathomable. So Han Qinger and Han Huang didn't sense anything when he switched to his soul fragment. The family of three traveled the immortal world and went to places with many people and demons. Han Qinger was very excited and kept introducing the various things along the way to Han Huang. At first, Han Huang was also very excited, but he calmed down not long after. Several days later, Han Huang interrupted Han Qinger and said impatiently, "That's all. It's not fun at all. Father, when are we going back?" Hanju pretended to be surprised and asked, "Why not? Don't you find it interesting?" Han Huang shook his head. Han Qinger also looked at him in confusion. She had also come to the immortal world when she was young. After wandering around for 10 years, she was still filled with interest. Why was this little brother so different? Han Huang curled his lips and said, "It's not new at all. They only look like us, but they're actually different. They're no different from the flowers and insects by the roadside." Hanju frowned. For some reason, he saw a hint of loneliness in his eyes. This kid is interesting. Such emotions at such a young age? Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. He was the only primordial fiend celestial in the world now. Han Huang was very excited at first. He only wanted to find the aura of his own kind. However, after walking for so long, he did not encounter the aura of the primordial fiend celestial. He was naturally disappointed. Han Qinger was not a primordial fiend celestial. In the end, she was still a human. Looking up, they were all of the same race, so everything was naturally new. Han Huang felt especially uncomfortable and even disgusted. Hanju smiled and waved his sleeve to bring the siblings back. Back in the third Tao field, Han Qinger left the Taoist temple regretfully, but Han Huang did not. He stood in front of his father and lowered his head. Hanju sat on the 36th grade reincarnation world destruction Black Lotus, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong, Huanger?" Han Huang looked up and stared at him. "Father, why is my aura different from yours? Am I really your child?" Hanju smiled. "Of course. Your mother nurtured you for millions of years before giving birth to you. How can you not be our child?" "Then my aura and yours. I was like you in the past. Later, I became stronger," Hanju explained simply. He had to remind Han Huang about the primordial fiend celestial after he grew up. Anyway, Hanju wouldn't let him go out alone for now. The primordial fiend celestial's identity was too sensitive. At the very least, this kid had to have the ability to protect himself. It was best to cultivate beside him until he achieved the great Tao Supreme Realm. Han Huang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. He even patted his chest, looking very cute. He didn't have the terrifying appearance of the primordial fiend celestial at all. Hanju raised his hand and pulled him into his arms. "Huanger, you are indeed extraordinary. But remember, many people are stronger than you in this world. When you grow up, you have to cultivate well and not slack off." Han Huang looked up and asked curiously, "Father, how strong are you?" Hanju smiled and said, "I'm stronger than you. Indeed, when you hit me, I couldn't even resist." "What? You still want to resist?" "Hee." Han Huang scratched his head and smiled foolishly. Hanju couldn't help but pinch his face. It was strange. Han Huang's personality was stranger than Han Tuo's and Han Qing'er's, but he inexplicably liked him the most. It was not because of potential, but affinity. The father and son began to chat. Such opportunities were rare. Han Huang felt that his father was even gentler than usual, and liked him very much. After chatting, in his heart, Hanju's status had already surpassed Han Qing'er's. As for Xing Hongxian, she was busy cultivating. He rarely saw her. Several years later, having just turned 10, Han Huang began to cultivate on his own. However, it was a little humiliating for the primordial fiend celestial's potential without an orthodox cultivation technique. Hanju called him over and taught him the great Tao of extreme origin. Under the old tree, Qingwaner sat beside Han Qing'er and sighed. "Huanger started cultivating at such a young age. Men are really different. Back then your father had to force you to cultivate." Han Qing'er curled her lips and said, "Second brother has good potential and a high sense of achievement from cultivation. He naturally likes to cultivate." Qingwaner rolled her eyes at her, knowing that this girl was teasing her again. At this moment, Han Huang ran out of the Taoist temple and stopped in front of them. "Qing'er, I just learned a mystical power. Do you want to spar?" The primordial fiend celestial's potential was extraordinary. In less than half a year, he walked the great Tao of extreme origin, and even learned a mystical power. The 10-year-old Han Huang was already a handsome youth with an imposing appearance. Han Qing'er asked angrily, "Are you bullying me?" This kid was a freedom sage. How could she defeat him? For some reason, Han Qing'er thought of Jiang Juesher. He was also a freedom sage. She didn't know if he could deal with Han Huang in this universe. Han Huang sighed. "No one can fight me. I don't even know how strong I am. The disciples in the Tao field are too weak. I'm afraid of killing them." Han Qing'er said, "You want to find an opponent? One of father's disciples is outside the Tao field. His name is Jiang Juesher. He's also at the Freedom Realm. Go beg my father to let you fight him." Only one chapter today. Next chapter will be posted maybe in few hours or tomorrow. Chapter 904 Jiang Juesher vs. Han Huang. Chapter 904 Jiang Juesher vs. Han Huang. Father has such a powerful disciple? Han Huang asked in surprise. He had never seen a hidden sect disciple before. Han Qing'er nodded impatiently. Now she was annoyed when she saw Han Huang. Comparisons were really infuriating. Han Huang immediately ran back to find his father. Hanju felt that it was feasible. Han Huang wasn't Jiang Juesher's match, and he was only 10 years old now. It was enough to shock Jiang Juesher and give him a sense of danger. Hanju's body emitted a divine light. Han Huang widened his eyes and opened his mouth. He imitated it, and his body emitted a purple light. Then he sized himself up and was extremely happy. Hanju waved his hand and moved Jiang Juesher into the Taoist temple. Jiang Juesher was meditating and cultivating when he suddenly sensed Han Huang's aura. He couldn't help but open his eyes. Han Huang was staring at him with a burning gaze at this moment. He saw Hanju and hurriedly knelt. "Greetings, master." Although Hanju had never revealed his true body, his figure was unforgettable. "You are reading on MYBOX and 0VEL. Calm, Hanju said. "I called you here today to let you spar with your junior. This is my son Han Huang. He just turned 10. Jiang Juesher was stunned. He was asked to spar with a 10-year-old child? He was suddenly moved. He stared at Han Huang in disbelief. He gritted his teeth and asked, "Are you Freedom?" Han Huang said proudly, "That's right. I was born in the Freedom realm." He naturally had some understanding of cultivation realms, after stepping into the great Tao of extreme origin. Hearing this, Jiang Juesher's pupils dilated as waves surged in his heart. He couldn't help but look at Hanju. Hanju said, "This child was born after being nurtured in his mother's womb for millions of years. He was indeed born as Freedom." Jiang Juesher was silent. He was still shocked. If he calculated the time it took to be nurtured, then with his potential accumulated over 10,000 years, he was still inferior to Han Huang. He suddenly understood Liu Bei's words. Hanju really didn't care about his potential. Come. Let's fight. I've wanted to fight ever since I was born, but no one dares to fight me," Han Huang said excitedly. With that said, he waved his fist at Jiang Juesher, but he was frozen the moment he attacked. Jiang Juesher frowned. He didn't expect this child to not care about morals. On second thought, the other party was only 10 years old. How could he know so much? Hanju said, "I'm not asking you to fight here. I'll pull you into an illusion. You can use your full strength, and won't really hurt the other party there. In addition, you can choose other opponents in this illusion. They're all opponents I've encountered in my life. They're of various realms." With that, he gave Han Huang and Jiang Juesher the authority to enter the simulation trial, and pulled them into the battle. He sent a voice transmission to Jiang Juesher. "This kid is still immature. Go all out. Don't hold back." Jiang Juesher was originally hesitant, but he immediately understood when he heard this. So master wanted to train little junior brother. It made sense when he thought about it. How arrogant was he to be born as Freedom? If he didn't discipline him well, he would definitely cause a huge commotion in the future. Jiang Juesher felt proud. He believed that it was rare for him to encounter an opponent at his realm, let alone a young child. The battle quickly began. The first to attack was naturally Han Huang, who was then immediately suppressed. Hanju watched the battle. He accidentally discovered that Han Huang's body was very strong. Jiang Juesher couldn't kill him instantly even if he beat him. Han Huang finally lost after 10 breaths of time. The two of them opened their eyes. Jiang Juesher had a strange expression. He felt an unprecedented sense of urgency. This kid's body was not simple. Han Huang stared at him and gritted his teeth. Again, Jiang Juesher glanced at Hanju. He agreed to continue sparring upon seeing the latter's nod. Several hours later, Han Huang had already been defeated 50 times, but he lasted longer and longer after every fight. Jiang Juesher looked at him, as if he was a monster. Hanju said, "Let's end it here. Jiang Juesher, you can cultivate here, and continue to use the simulation trial to train yourself. I'll let you go back when you don't want to train your combat experience anymore." "Thank you, master." Jiang Juesher cupped his fists and bowed. Then, he walked to the side and sat cross-legged to meditate. Han Huang kept staring at him. His eyes were not fierce or afraid, but very serious and cold. Jiang Juesher inexplicably felt that he was prey, and couldn't help but be afraid. He had to work hard in the future. He couldn't let this kid catch up. Hanju stared at him and said, "What? Can't afford to lose?" Han Huang came back to his senses, and looked at him. "I didn't lose. Give me time. I'll defeat him sooner or later." "Will the enemy give you time to surpass him if you offend an enemy in the chaos?" Hanju said coldly. Han Huang became silent. After a moment of silence he said, "Father, teach me a mystical power. I want to defeat him in 5 years." Fortunately, Jiang Juesher had already entered the simulation trial. Otherwise, it was unknown what his expression would be. Han Ju stared at him and asked, "What if you can't do it?" Han Huang said in a low voice, "I can definitely do it. He's stronger than me now, but I feel that he's just inferior to me. He's only a powerful worm." Han Ju said, "A fellow disciple is the same as your family. How can you describe him as a worm?" "I know. It's just that the difference between us." "Sigh. Father, hurry up and teach me your mystical power." Seeing that he couldn't explain it clearly, Han Huang pounced into Han Ju's arms and started to act cute. Han Ju smiled and started to preach the mystical power. Soon, Han Huang sat in front of him and started to listen carefully. The primordial Fian Celestial's comprehension was very strong. He had grasped the divine might great heaven palm that Han Qinger had used 100 years to learn in a few months, let alone other mystical powers. 3 years later, Han Ju was still preaching when a line of words appeared in front of him. "The evil heavenly emperor sent you a dream. Do you accept?" "Accept." Han Ju thought silently and started to multitask. He preached the Tao and entered the dream. The dream was still the same forest outside the Jade Pure Sacred Sect. The evil heavenly emperor laughed when he saw him. "Han Ju, you gave birth to another good son?" Han Ju knew that Han Huang's actions back then would definitely be caught by many mighty figures. He didn't hide anything and just said, "Just a brat. I know that you're usually busy cultivating. You can leave him to me if you don't have time to take care of the child. Isn't this too? It's no trouble." The evil heavenly emperor took a step forward, his eyes glowing. Han Ju was speechless. "Why are you always thinking about my sons?" All right, his son's potential was indeed impressive. Han Ju said helplessly, "You might not be able to accept this kid." The evil heavenly emperor asked in surprise, "Why? He already has a master." Han Ju explained Han Huang's personality and ideas. In other words, the evil heavenly emperor couldn't subdue Han Huang. Unlike Han Tua, Han Huang had a high starting point and was not convinced by anyone. The evil heavenly emperor was silent. That's right. He was born as freedom and was unprecedented. How could he take in such an existence just because he wanted to? "Then can I come and see him?" the evil heavenly emperor asked, still unwilling to give up. Han Ju said, "Of course." The evil heavenly emperor was a rare good friend of his. The evil heavenly emperor had also done his best to help him on his path of growth. Han Ju naturally would not neglect the evil heavenly emperor now that he was stronger. "I'll come to the heavenly Tao soon." With that, the dream ended. Chapter 905 Eternal Peak. Chapter 905 Eternal Peak. 5 years passed quickly. Han Huang couldn't wait to wake Jiang Juesher up. "You want to challenge me again?" Jiang Juesher frowned at the youth in front of him. "You want to defeat me after cultivating for 5 years? You're too arrogant." Han Huang said, "Come. I promised my father that I would defeat you in 5 years. The time will expire if I wait any longer." Jiang Juesher looked at Han Ju. He could only agree upon seeing that he didn't say anything. However, Han Ju's voice secretly entered his ears. "Try your best to defeat him." Jiang Juesher looked at the excited and expectant Han Huang and couldn't help but mourn. Jiang Juesher was the first to speak after entering the simulation trial. "Little Junior, your potential is indeed powerful. If it was any other freedom, you might really surpass me in 5 years, but it's impossible to surpass me. I've never met a match in the freedom realm." Han Huang suddenly waved his palm. Divine might great heaven palm. With a palm strike, space shattered. It was unstoppable. Jiang Juesher drew a circle with both hands. He first used the reincarnation great creation technique, and then used the divine might great heaven palm. Its power far exceeded Han Huang's. The two palms collided. The world would instantly turn into dust if they were in the immortal world. The battle ended very quickly, in less than 20 breaths of time. You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Calm. Han Huang opened his eyes with a dark expression. Jiang Juesher felt a little ashamed. After all, the other party was only a 15-year-old youth. Han Ju said, "This is the end of your spar. Jiang Juesher, continue cultivating. Ignore him." Jiang Juesher stood up and said, "Master, I should go back and cultivate. Little Junior's potential is indeed unheard of. I'll definitely lose if he's given another 5 years. I have to go back and cultivate to attain the great Tao as soon as possible. Hanju nodded and waved his hand to send him back. Han Huang's expression did not ease upon hearing Jiang Juesher's words. He was still shocked. He had said that he would defeat Jiang Juesher in 5 years, but he did not. This was the first blow he had suffered in his life. Hanju retracted his divine light and sighed. Huang, do you understand what father means now? That Jiang Juesher looks like a worm, but he has great providence. In a sense, his potential is not inferior to yours. Han Huang looked up and asked, what is great providence? You will understand in the future. Your level is too low now. You won't understand even if I say it. I just hope that you won't doubt yourself and underestimate all living beings. Han Huang took a deep breath and nodded slowly upon hearing his father's gentle words. The father and son chatted for a while more before Han Huang walked out of the Taoist temple and came to Han Qing'er. Han Qing'er clearly felt that Han Huang had become stronger after not seeing him for 5 years. His aura shocked the disciples in the distance. What's wrong? You seem very unhappy? Han Qing'er asked. She could tell at a glance that Han Huang was in a low mood. She was quite unhappy. You have such good potential, why aren't you happy? Han Huang sat in front of her and said, I can't defeat Jiang Juesher. Han Qing'er was shocked. She indeed thought that Jiang Juesher was stronger, but she was still shocked when she heard this outcome. After all, in her heart, her second brother was a monster. Han Qing'er consoled him. It's fine. After all, Jiang Juesher has cultivated for tens of thousands of years. You've only cultivated for a few years. Han Huang said, no, he's indeed powerful, but I'll surpass him. I'm here to tell you that I can't play with you in the future. I'm preparing to cultivate in seclusion, just like father before. Han Qing'er stared at him in surprise and discovered that this kid was serious. She was now curious about how strong Jiang Juesher was. He could actually make this kid so agitated. Han Huang turned around and left. He went to visit Xing Hongxian and Qing Wen'er to tell his 2 mothers about this. After all, he was still young. This was the first time he was entering seclusion, and felt that it was a major event in his life. Xing Hongxian and Qing Wen'er found it funny, but they still reminded him seriously. Just like that, Han Huang returned to Hanju's side, and the father and son cultivated in seclusion. 7,435 years passed in the blink of an eye. Hanju opened his eyes and looked at Han Huang, who had already grown up. His eyes were filled with relief. His son had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had already reached the late stage of the freedom realm. It was not impossible for him to attain the great Tao within 30,000 years. In this aspect, he had already surpassed his father. Huang, Hanju called out softly. Han Huang opened his eyes and asked, Father, what is it? He stretched lazily. The father and son had not spoken ever since he had entered seclusion. He was also immersed in cultivation, and could not extricate himself. The feeling of becoming stronger was wonderful. I'll bring you to see someone, Hanju said and teleported Han Huang into the 100-peak immortal river, before jumping to the 33rd heaven. The current 33rd heaven could already allow great Tao sages to enter and leave, but only those below the sages. Hanju brought Han Huang to the Universal Hall. At this moment, the evil Heavenly Emperor was talking to Heavenly Venerate Xian. Han Huang followed behind Hanju, and was secretly curious. As what was this place? After entering the Universal Hall, Han Huang's gaze landed on Heavenly Venerate Xian Du and the evil Heavenly Emperor. He could sense that the 2 of them were very strong, and should be at the Freedom Realm. The evil Heavenly Emperor's gaze landed on Han Huang first, and his eyes instantly shone. The evil Heavenly Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Xian Du immediately stood up. Haha, Hanju, this is your son. He really looks like you. The evil Heavenly Emperor sighed. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du looked at Han Huang, and his heart palpitated. Freedom Realm. Was this the person who caused the phenomenon thousands of years ago? The Divine Might Heavenly Sage's son? He was so strong in less than 10,000 years. Hanju stopped in front of the 2 of them and smiled. That's right. His name is Han Huang, Huang. Aren't you going to greet the two seniors? This is the evil Heavenly Emperor. He helped me when I was young, and is my benefactor. This is Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, Father's good friend. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, who had always been indifferent, beamed at the words good friend. Han Huang greets the two seniors. Han Huang cupped his fists and bowed, but his expression was not very respectful. Regarding this, the evil Heavenly Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Xiandu were not unhappy. Instead, they warmly took out Dharma treasures as greeting gifts. The two of them were very generous, and took out chaotic numinous treasures. They did not have many of such supreme treasures. The evil Heavenly Emperor glanced at Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, and felt threatened. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu felt heartache, but he knew that this treasure no longer affected him much. After all, he didn't need to go out and fight. It was better to rope in the future peak of the chaos. That's right. Han Huang was already at the peak of history in Heavenly Venerate Xiandu's heart. Even Azure Heaven Mystic was far inferior to him. This was the first time Han Huang had obtained a treasure. He had seen a Dharma treasure when he fought Jiang Juesher, so he was very happy. Thank you, seniors. Han Huang took the Dharma treasures and said in surprise. His gaze became gentle as he looked at the evil Heavenly Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Xiandu Hanju, and the other two sat down with a smile and started to chat. Not long after, the topic landed on Han Huang. The evil Heavenly Emperor smiled and said, Huanger, do you want to follow me into the chaos? Your brother also followed me back then. Chapter 906 Primordial Fiend Celestial Battles The Chaotic Fiend Celestials. Chapter 906 Primordial Fiend Celestial Battles The Chaotic Fiend Celestials. My big brother used to follow you? Han Huang asked curiously. He had long heard of Han Tua, but he had never seen him before. The evil Heavenly Emperor smiled and nodded. Han Huang shook his head. Forget it. Although you treat me very well, you're not strong. I don't want to follow you. No one in this world is worth following other than my parents. The evil Heavenly Emperor was stunned. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu's expression became subtle. The evil Heavenly Emperor said, It's good to go out and broaden your horizons. Your father is busy with seclusion, and doesn't have the time to take care of you. Han Huang said, I also want to enter seclusion. Cultivation is the foundation. I won't go out if I don't cultivate to be the strongest. The evil Heavenly Emperor couldn't help but look at Hanju. Hanju smiled and said, This is his own idea. I brought him to the immortal world previously. He lost interest in a few days and wanted to go back. Han Huang nodded. I've already mastered the sage sense and observed the chaos. Although I don't know everything, the chaos doesn't interest me for now. The father and son sat side by side, looking like brothers. The evil Heavenly Emperor smiled helplessly. Everyone has their own ambitions. I won't force you. The next time I meet Han Tua, I'll definitely tell him to come back to see you. Han Huang smiled. He was indeed looking forward to meeting his brother. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu asked, There's an additional sage position in the Heavenly Tao. Should we let Han Huang? You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Calm Hanju shook his head. There's no need. With his personality, it's impossible for him to manage the Heavenly Tao. Let him stay by my side. As for the sage position, you can arrange it yourself. Curious, Han Huang asked. What is the sage position? It's none of your business, Hanju replied casually. Then, the evil Heavenly Emperor pulled Han Huang to the side, as if he was an elder concerned about a junior. He asked about his father's well-being, while Hanju and Heavenly Venerate Xiandu talked about the Heavenly Tao. Now that the chaos was peaceful, the Heavenly Tao could develop freely. The immortal world was only so big. The number of things that could be interfered with by sages was limited. So after new sages appeared, they were all responsible for opening a chaotic heavenly road. There were already 15 chaotic heavenly roads that led to all directions of the chaos. Because the chaotic heavenly road could protect living beings below the sage realm, more and more chaotic living beings joined the Heavenly Tao. This was something that the three pure sacred world could not compare to. The three pure sacred world had also opened the three pure heavenly road. Unfortunately, the rules were not stable. They would be rejected by the chaos if they were too strong. They would also be easily shattered and become a joke if they were too weak. The current situation was that as long as the two sides did not fight, the heavenly Tao would sooner or later surpass the three pure sacred world. This was already the consensus of the chaos. Hanju was satisfied with heavenly venerate Xian Du's conclusion. He praised, "The heavenly Tao is truly fortunate to have the heavenly venerate. Come to my Tao field if you have the time in the future. I will preach the Tao for you and help you embark on the great Tao as soon as possible." Heavenly venerate Xian Du was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly thanked him. His contact with Laozi had decreased ever since he had chosen the heavenly Tao. As for being taught again, that was almost impossible. He was also too embarrassed to mention it. Several hours later, Hanju, Han Huang, and the evil heavenly emperor walked out of the universal hall. The evil heavenly emperor looked at Han Huang and smiled dotingly. "Don't forget our agreement." Han Huang waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. I'll be the first to find you if I go to the chaos." He looked so heroic that Hanju wanted to laugh. The evil heavenly emperor left after exchanging some pleasantries. Hanju then brought Han Huang back to the 100-peak immortal river. He thought for a moment, and then brought him to the second Tao field. Li Yao and Tao Comprehension Sword were still cultivating in the Taoist temple. Sensing Han Huang's aura, they immediately opened their eyes. Their eyes lit up, and they immediately stood up. "Wow, is this your second son?" Tao Comprehension Sword approached Han Huang, scaring him away. Hanju smiled. "That's right. His name is Han Huang. Huanger, these two are your third and fourth mothers." "Fourth mother?" Tao Comprehension Sword's face instantly turned red. Han Huang bowed. Although he was proud, he was still very polite to his own family. Li Yao and Tao Comprehension Sword had already learned of Han Huang's potential in the myriad worlds projection. They were not the only ones. The personal disciples were the same. They had long wanted to see him. They were naturally happy to see him today. After a conversation, Han Huang also began to call them third mother and fourth mother. Then the four of them walked out of the Taoist temple. Hanju gathered all the fiend celestials. Currently, there were 51 chaotic fiend celestials in the second Tao field. There was also one being nurtured in the primordial world. The scene was spectacular after the fiend celestials gathered. Han Huang narrowed his eyes and sized them up. "Is this the second young master? He does look like master." The black hell chicken was the first to smile. However, the others felt inexplicably uncomfortable. This feeling was very strange, as if they had encountered their natural enemy, especially Han Huang's gaze. Hanju saw through everyone's thoughts, so he said, "Yes, he's my second son, Han Huang. He was born as freedom and has a special bloodline. Your bloodlines have already been raised to the top level of the chaos. It's easy for you to be hostile to each other, but this is only a conflict between bloodlines, so I'm letting you know in advance. In the future, you still have to support each other on the path of cultivation." The fiend celestials immediately felt relieved and nodded upon hearing this. That was indeed the case. Not to mention Han Huang, they already disliked each other. Fortunately, they had interacted for a long time before completely integrating. This was also the main reason why the 3,000 chaotic fiend celestials fought. Morongqi took a step forward and smiled. "Grandmaster, why don't you let him stay with us for a period of time?" The other fiend celestials hooted. Hanju said, "That's my intention." With that, Hanju turned around and returned to the Taoist temple, leaving Han Huang surrounded by everyone. Guan Bubi stared at Han Huang and said, "Junior, you're very strong. Shall we spar?" Han Huang glanced at him and shook his head. Then, he walked in front of the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial and said, "You're the strongest. Let's spar." This scene surprised everyone. The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial was indeed the strongest. He had been suppressed by Morongqi in the past, and had only recently surpassed him. Guan Bubi curled his lips and looked unhappy, but he did not dare to refute. He had always been tortured by the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial, and was already a younger brother. Only he was stubborn in the second Tao field. He dared to keep fighting the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial. As they fought, he developed feelings. "All right, The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial agreed readily. The two of them directly entered the simulation trial and began sparring. The current Han Huang was no longer the youth who had been tortured by Jiang Juesher. In the past thousands of years, other than his cultivation, his combat talent had also been completely awakened with the help of the simulation trial. Several dozen breaths later, the simulation ended. The two of them opened their eyes and frowned. Guan Bubi smiled. How about it? Little junior brother, you should spar with me. Han Huang ignored him and stared at the heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial. You're very strong, stronger than Jiang Juesher. The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial took a deep breath and said, I'm not your match. Everyone was shocked. The heavenly constellation Fiend Celestial was defeated? Oh my god, what kind of pervert has Master given birth to? He isn't even 10,000 years old yet, right? The Black Hell Chicken shouted, expressing everyone's thoughts. Chapter 907 150,000 Foolish Sword Sages. Chapter 907 150,000 Foolish Sword Sages. I'm indeed not 10,000 years old, but you're not bad either. At least you've impressed me. You seem to contain different powers. Come, let's spar one by one. Han Huang scanned the Fiend Celestials and smiled. The Fiend Celestials had no objections to this. In any case, they wouldn't die in the simulation trial. It just so happened that they wanted to test Han Huang's strength. Just like that, Han Huang quickly became friends with the Fiend Celestials. On the other side, Han Ju was preaching to Li Yao and Dao Comprehension Sword in the Taoist temple. He left with Han Huang 10 years later. The Fiend Celestials were all convinced by Han Huang's talent. Han Ju estimated that if he abdicated in the future, the position of sect master of the hidden sect would probably go to Han Huang. At least, Han Huang had the support of the 51 chaotic Fiend Celestials. Back in the third Dao field, Han Huang curled his lips and said, Why must you bring me back? I want to stay there. Han Ju scolded jokingly. Of course, you find it interesting that you bully them every day. Think about it. Would you find it interesting if you were always defeated by Jiang Juesher? He's definitely not my match now. Call him over. Han Huang said angrily. His pride also had grown as he grew up. The defeat back then was his only humiliation. Han Ju said, What? You still hate him? Are you so petty? Han Huang snorted. Of course not. How can I hate him since we're fellow disciples? I just can't accept that I lost. Go out and find a place to cultivate. Don't stay beside me in the future. From today onwards, I will resume my seclusion. My seclusion lasts for 100,000 years every time. Han Ju waved his hand. You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Calm 100,000 years? Han Huang's eyes lit up, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He immediately bowed and walked out of the palace. Han Ju heaved a sigh of relief. He could finally cultivate in peace. Although Han Huang had grown up well, his son was still becoming stronger. What satisfied him the most was still his own strength. Han Ju only believed in one principle, which was to rely on himself. Han Ju still didn't know his limit ever since he had evolved into the ultimate origin Fiend Celestial. Previously, insta-killing the 100,000 foolish sword sages was not his limit. Now was a good time to try. Han Ju entered the simulation trial. He directly fought 150,000 foolish sword sages. How terrifying were 150,000 great Dao supreme experts. At first, Han Ju was suppressed, but he gained the upper hand not long after. In the end, he used 5 minutes to kill all 150,000 foolish sword sages. Han Ju continued to challenge. He could kill 150,000 foolish sword sages in 3 breaths after hundreds of times. This was already the limit. After all, a great Dao Supreme was not immortal. It would be even harder to kill all 150,000 great Dao Supremes if this was reality. After all, a great Dao Supreme would escape. The opponents in the simulation trial would only die in battle. Han Ju was in high spirits and continued cultivating after confirming his strength. He could instantly kill 150,000 foolish sword sages if he broke through. The sea of clouds surrounded the mountains and overlapped like steps that led to the sky. On a mountainside, Dao Sovereign, Zhao Xianyuan, Jiang Yi Lao Dan, Han Tua, and Tian were drinking and chatting in the pavilion. In that case, that kid called Han Huang will reach the great Dao realm soon? TSK. His potential is indeed ridiculous. Why isn't Han Tua so powerful? Tian swirled his wine and clicked his tongue in wonder. Han Tua smiled helplessly. My father's cultivation level was worlds apart from when he gave birth to me and my younger brother. There's naturally a difference in our potential. Lao Dan sighed. Such potential is no longer ridiculous. It's truly unprecedented. Jiang Yi smiled. Little Junior has such a start. I wonder if he can cultivate patiently. The others discussed. Han Huang became the main topic. Han Tua smiled. Although he had never seen Han Huang, he liked his younger brother very much. How could he not like the fact that this little brother was a topic to brag about ever since he was born? Not long after, everyone put down the topic of Han Huang and started to talk about serious matters. You want to go to the bottom of the chaos? Han Tua frowned. Lao Dan smiled and said, Don't worry, just let us in. We won't trouble you later. Dao Sovereign nodded. Zhao Xianyuan sighed. I feel like I'm going to be in trouble again. Dao Sovereign glared at him, signaling him to shut up. Tian said, The bottom of the chaos is very dangerous. We almost died there. Even the leader of the divine spirits is afraid of that place. Lao Dan smiled leisurely. Don't worry. My main body has been there before, but it's been sealed recently. I can't find the entrance. I want to seek opportunities for these three brats. After all, the chaotic assembly is getting closer and closer. Chaotic assembly. Now, this meeting had already attracted the attention of the entire chaos. Even the 5 great divine punishers had to participate and represent the ultimate god of punishment to prove themselves. Han Tua glanced at the 3 of them and hesitated for a moment before nodding. Seeing this, Dao Sovereign and Jiang Yi smiled. Zhao Xianyuan sighed. Tian suddenly asked, Will Han Huang participate in the chaotic assembly? If he obtains the eternal peak at a few million years old. He was especially interested in Han Huang. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing how to reply. They wanted to say that it was impossible, but Han Huang was born with unlimited possibilities. For a time, the pavilion fell silent. They suddenly realized that Han Huang might be the strongest opponent. Time passed quickly. 100,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Hanju opened his eyes. Surprise flashed across them. What a domineering ultimate origin fiend celestial. His cultivation speed far exceeded that of before. It was at least 10 times faster. At this rate, he would soon break through to the late-stage Great Dao Supreme Realm. His bloodline was 2 levels higher than the top geniuses in the chaos, so his cultivation speed was naturally the fastest. Hanju glanced at Han Huang in the Taoist temple next door. This kid was actually a great Dao sage already. He needed to step into the door of the great Dao after attaining the great Dao. Would this kid cause trouble? Hanju was busy cultivating, so he ignored the chaos. He pinched his fingers to deduce and smiled. The divine robe Taoist is not bad. It turned out that before Han Huang broke through the door of the great Dao, the divine robe Taoists will had arrived behind the door to help him. With him around, naturally, no great Dao sage or great Dao divine spirit stopped Han Huang. Han Huang broke through very smoothly, and even became friends with the divine robe Taoist. The 2 of them agreed to meet when they had time. The divine robe Taoist was very sensible. Hanju suddenly thought of something and asked in his mind, Other than me, does anyone know that Han Huang is the primordial fiend celestial? 3 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. No, Hanju heaved a sigh of relief. On second thought, it made sense. With the rampage of the divine authority generals, the legend of the misfortune of the primordial fiend celestial had long collapsed. All living beings thought that the primordial fiend celestial was fabricated. As for Han Huang's potential, all living beings could understand it with the divine might heavenly sage's reputation. Now it depended on what the Tao creators thought. The Tao creators would not make a move as long as Han Huang could not threaten the entire chaos. In the eyes of all living beings, they did not know the existence of the Tao creator at all. Not to mention the Great Tao Supreme Realm. They thought that the Great Tao Sage Realm was the apex. Chapter 908 Ancestor Tian Su. I have an opportunity. Chapter 908 Ancestor Tian Su. I have an opportunity. Will Han Huang be targeted by the Tao creators if he participates in the chaotic assembly? 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Han Ju silently chose to continue as he looked at the line of words in front of him. No, Han Ju heaved a sigh of relief. He suddenly became interested in the Tao creator's perspective. What kind of danger could make them unable to sit still? Previously, the chaotic consciousness still did not make a move when he killed 20,000 divine authority generals. This could only mean one thing. The difference between the Great Tao Supreme Realm and the Tao Creator Realm was unimaginable. It was precisely because the difference was too great that the Tao creators felt that everything was certain. Han Ju stopped thinking about this question. He would naturally understand when he reached the Tao creator level. He opened the emails and checked them. It had been a long time since he had read them. Your good friend Huang Zuantian has obtained a huge amount of faith power. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend Pan Xian received guidance from your good friend Pan Gu. He has learned a great Tao mystical power. Your grand disciple Chu Shuren has entered the ancient desolate. You are reading on myboxn0vel.com. Your good friend Divine Lord Peacock was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure. His Tao soul was damaged. Your good friend Divine Lord Peacock has been deprived of his connate origin. His intelligence has been sealed. Your son Han Huang has comprehended the primordial true meaning and created a great Tao mystical power. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend Immortal Emperor Samsara received guidance from a mysterious mighty figure. His providence has increased greatly. Your disciple Tao Sovereign has entered the bottom of the chaos. The recent emails were very harmonious. There were no large-scale attacks. Han Ju's attention was attracted by Divine Lord Peacock. This fellow had been suppressed for a period of time and had yet to escape. It seemed like he couldn't hold on much longer. No matter what, this fellow was the Dark Forbidden Lord's pawn. He couldn't fall behind. Han Ju thought for a moment and sent a dream to Divine Lord Peacock in the image of the Dark Forbidden Lord. Divine Lord Peacock's intelligence had been sealed, but that was only because it couldn't fuse with his body, and not because his rationality had been erased. In the dream, Divine Lord Peacock saw the Dark Forbidden Lord, and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then he looked ashamed. All these years he used all sorts of methods, but he still could not escape. He had wanted to seek help from the Dark Forbidden Lord countless times, but he was afraid of losing face and could only endure. Han Ju asked, "Why did you go to the ancient desolate? Who suppressed you?" Divine Lord Peacock did not dare to be careless anymore and told him everything. He was even more ashamed. He didn't know who the other party was. Han Ju said, "Just wait." He removed the dream. Han Ju began to use the derivation function. He sent a dream first to tell Divine Lord Peacock that he was the one who helped him and affirm his loyalty. 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? A trillion years of lifespan. It was equivalent to lousy. He didn't expect such an existence to be hiding in the ancient desolate. Continue. Han Ju thought silently. If the other party was too strong, he could only give up on Divine Lord Peacock. There was no need to risk everything for him. He had already saved Divine Lord Peacock before, but this fellow was useless. Han Ju would have long given up on him, if not for the fact that he had contributed to pestering the cursed fiend celestial. A figure appeared in Han Ju's mind, and a line of words appeared in front of him. Ancestor Tian Su, perfected Great Tao Supreme Realm, transcendent Tao expert, world creator, connate life form of the chaos. He once created the first world of the chaos, and was suppressed by the Tao ancestor in the ancient desolate, never to transcend. Indeed, his cultivation level is the same as mine. Such an existence was actually suppressed by the Tao ancestor. Could the Tao ancestor be a Tao creator? Han Ju checked his interpersonal relationships. The portrait of the Tao ancestor was still black, and his cultivation was still unknown. Han Ju asked in his mind, Is the Tao ancestor a Tao creator? Unable to capture the karma? Perhaps it doesn't exist. What a Tao ancestor? Is there a Tao ancestor among the 5 great Tao creators? Unable to capture the karma? Perhaps it doesn't exist. Hanju could only give up and focus on Ancestor Tiansu. Can I insta-kill Ancestor Tiansu? 1 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Yes, that was fine. Hanju immediately sent a dream to Ancestor Tiansu in the image of the Dark Forbidden Lord. He would talk first. He would consider destruction if that didn't work. It wasn't easy for everyone to cultivate. It was fine as long as the karma could be resolved. Hanju didn't want to be stained with hostility. In the dream, covered in black, Hanju saw Ancestor Tiansu. Ancestor Tiansu had white hair and wore a tattered gray robe. Although his clothes were ragged, his temperament was still extraordinary. Especially his eyes. They were filled with dignity, as if they could see through everything in the world. Ancestor Tiansu frowned in surprise upon seeing him. The other party could actually forcefully pull him into a dream. He was quite capable. However, he didn't know the Dark Forbidden Lord. He sighed at the rise of the younger generation. He had been suppressed by the Tao ancestor for a long time. It was not surprising that a new mighty figure had appeared in the chaos. Hanju was the first to speak. Fellow Taoist, my subordinate accidentally entered the ancient desolate and offended you. He was suppressed by you for so many years and has been punished. Why don't you let him go? He's only a great Tao sage. He's not worth mentioning compared to your perfected great Tao supreme cultivation. He won't have what you need either. Patriarch Tiansu narrowed his eyes and asked, "Who are you talking about?" Divine Lord Peacock. Oh, so it's him. This little peacock keeps saying that he has a backing, but I didn't see anyone. I thought he was bluffing, but it's true. What do you think, fellow Taoist? Ancestor Tiansu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at Hanju. Thinking about something, Hanju was not in a hurry. After a long while, Ancestor Tiansu asked, "What's your name, fellow Taoist?" "I'm Ancestor Tiansu. Perhaps you've never heard of me." Hanju said, "All living beings call me the Dark Forbidden Lord. As for your name, I naturally know it. Otherwise, how can I visit you in your dreams? As the founder of the Heavenly Ruins Divine World, you created the first world in the chaos, but your fate is not good." Patriarch Tiansu sighed. "I didn't expect a cultivator to remember me. Fine, I can let Divine Lord Peacock go. Remind him that this ancient desolate is a scam when he returns. Don't come again." Hanju asked, "Is it related to the Tao ancestor?" Ancestor Tiansu was moved and narrowed his eyes. He suddenly flew into a rage. "Tao ancestor? Ha ha ha. What sort of Tao ancestor is he? Don't mention him anymore. That's all. I'll send that little peacock out of the ancient desolate." The dream shattered. Hanju opened his eyes. He didn't expect Ancestor Tiansu to be so emotional. However, he shouldn't go back on his word since he didn't hate him. Since he had nothing to do, Hanju continued to visit his dreams. This time, his target was Huang Zuantian. He used his main body this time. In the dream, it had been a long time. Huang Zuantian had already changed his attitude. His aura was not weaker than the divine robe Taoist. Huang Zuantian was not excited to see Hanju. He asked, "I have an opportunity. Do you want it?" Hanju rolled his eyes. "No." Huang Zuantian immediately knelt excitedly. Hanju asked about his recent situation. Huang Zuantian didn't hide anything and told him everything. Huang Zuantian had already taken charge of most of the Calamity Life controllers. Even Ancestor Shitian, Li Daokong, Shidu Dao, and the others were under him. Chapter 909 Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit, Half-Step Creator. Chapter 909 Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit. Half-Step Creator Hanju had no choice but to size him up again upon hearing that Ancestor Shitian and the others were also subdued by him. Unknowingly, Huang Zuantian was already powerful enough to break Hanju's impression of him. Before this, in Hanju's heart, Ancestor Shitian was definitely stronger than Huang Zuantian. Hanju suddenly wanted to calculate his future. Huang Zuantian talked about his experiences in high spirits. He was no longer the mortal who had crawled around in the Jie school. To Hanju, time passed very quickly, but to Huang Zuantian, time passed very slowly. He looked extremely glorious now, but in fact, he had paid an unimaginable price and effort. He felt tired when he recalled it. Scheming, power struggles, persuasion, and so on. He took every step very carefully, afraid that he would fail. Huang Zuantian changed the topic and suddenly said seriously, "Master, my subordinates discovered something recently, something unusual that might endanger the chaos." Hanju didn't say anything. This fellow actually learned to keep people in suspense. Huang Zuantian was very good at reading people's expressions and immediately said, "This place is in the ancient desolate. There is a forbidden land in the ancient desolate that leads to an unknown domain. The Dao devils ran out of it. More and more Dao devils appeared in the ancient desolate recently. I'm afraid it will become a huge problem." Hanju narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. Could it be that Ancestor Tian Su was brewing a plan to take revenge on the Dao ancestor? It was very likely. The ancient desolate is a forbidden land. Some time ago, many mighty figures died inside, so no one is paying attention to it anymore. It was after this that the speed at which the Dao devils in the ancient desolate increased far exceeded before. Such an increase in power must be for a reason. Most importantly, I didn't find out the mastermind behind them. I only know that the ancestor Tian Su who created the first world in the chaos was also a Dao devil, and was the strongest one. Huang Zuantian said with a solemn expression. He seemed to have fought with ancestor Tian Su before, and his eyes revealed fear. "You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Hanju's expression changed slightly. Ancestor Tian Su was a Dao devil? Could it be that there was someone else behind this? Hanju said, "I'll pay attention to this matter. How does life plan to become independent?" The great Dao divine spirits no longer chased after the life faction, after the primordial ancestor god died. This gave them a chance to rest. Huang Zuantian said, "I plan to establish a lineage and live in seclusion. I'll make plans when the lineage is perfected. The current chaos looks peaceful, but I feel that there are undercurrents." Hanju nodded. It's indeed time to settle down. Time will erase everything. The two of them chatted for a while more before he removed the dream. This dream was mainly to tell Huang Zuantian that he still cared about him. Hanju opened his eyes and asked in his mind, "I want to know who's behind the Dao devils? 100 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue?" 100 trillion years was equivalent to 100 times stronger than Laozi, and 10 times weaker than a Dao creator. It was not ancestor Tian Su. Hanju immediately chose to continue. A figure appeared in his mind. His body was like green flames, and he wore a white bone mask. His black hair fluttered wantonly like countless tentacles. It was ghastly and terrifying. Ancient desolate divine spirit. Perfected great Dao supreme realm. Half-step creator. Transcendent Dao expert. Spirit of heaven and earth. Lord of negative karma. Lord of Dao devils. Heavenly Dao evil spirit half-step creator. How impressive! Hanju was attracted by the words, Heavenly Dao evil spirit. Was this fellow related to the Heavenly Dao? It made sense when he thought about it carefully. The ancient desolate was formed by the shattering of the primordial world. Most of it had transformed into the ancient desolate, and the remaining transformed into the immortal world. The ancient desolate spirit was naturally related to the Heavenly Dao. The Heavenly Dao did not seem powerful in the chaos, but it was deliberately suppressed by the Dao ancestor. In fact, the Heavenly Dao was ancient. They could cultivate to the top of the chaos. If it was any other living being, can I insta-kill the ancient desolate divine spirit? 100 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue? No. Hanju was a little disappointed. However, on second thought, it made sense. After all, the other party was already half-step into the creator realm. He wasn't someone a great Dao Supreme could kill. Hanju didn't think too much about it. He would wait for Divine Lord Peacock to escape. Then, he would directly inform him and let him worry. After all, the Lord of Chaos was the ultimate god of punishment, not him, the divine might heavenly sage. Then, Han Ju closed his eyes and continued cultivating under the old tree. Han Qing'er stared at the distant disciples in boredom. She yawned and muttered, "Why isn't second brother out of seclusion yet? Is seclusion so fun?" At her side, Qingwan'er smiled and said, "Your second brother has great ambitions. How can he be like you, cultivating diligently like your father one moment, and feeling bored the next?" Han Qing'er rolled her eyes and said, "In the past, I also had great ambitions, but I knew that there would be no place for me by father's side in the future the moment second brother was born. I might as well be a little darling enjoying life in peace. Why do I have to be competitive?" She believed that any prodigy would lose their confidence when they saw Han Huang, especially when this fellow was her biological brother. Qingwan'er covered her mouth and laughed. At this moment, Han Huang's Taoist temple suddenly opened. A figure slowly walked out and arrived in front of them in a few steps. Han Qing'er looked at the person in front of her and was stunned. Qingwan'er's eyes lit up as she praised him. "You're really becoming more and more like your father." It was Han Huang. He was handsome and tall. His eyes were filled with arrogance. His white robe fluttered, and his black hair was tied behind his head with a thin rope. Not only was his talent unparalleled, but so was his temperament. Han Qing'er snorted. "You still remember how to come out?" Han Huang smiled. "Qing'er, I've already attained the great Tao, and even created my own mystical power. Am I powerful?" "Impressive, impressive," Han Qing'er said perfunctorily, but she was shocked inside. She knew that Han Huang was monstrous, but she didn't expect him to be talented to this extent. Great Tao. Han Qing'er's heart ached. She was like a mortal in front of her second brother. Han Huang smiled. "I'll bring you out to travel the chaos when I cultivate for another 1,000,000 years. No one in the chaos can hurt you with me around. At that time, I'll accompany you wherever you want to go." Han Qing'er immediately beamed. The sorrow in her heart vanished. She punched Han Huang's chest and scolded him jokingly. "At least you have a conscience." Han Huang said, "Of course." Han Huang had liked to stick to Han Qing'er ever since he was young. The two of them had never left home, so their relationship was naturally not distant. Han Huang chatted with Qingwan'er and Han Qing'er for a while before bidding farewell to visit his mother, Xing Hongxian. It was mainly to show off his gains. However, Xing Hongxian was indifferent, making him secretly angry. It was still his third mother who gave him face. Eldest mother was Xing Hongxian. Second mother was Xian Qingjun. Third mother was Qingwan'er. Fourth mother was Li Yao. And fifth mother was Dao Comprehension Sword. This was a relationship that Han Ju later sorted out. Han Huang made up his mind to visit Qingwan'er instead of Xing Hongxian in the future. He walked out of his mother's Taoist temple and was about to return to cultivate when he suddenly looked up. At this moment, countless sailboats were sailing over from outside the universe of stars. Every sailboat carried thousands of living beings with different postures. They looked like humans and demons. Chapter 9-10 Chaos Unknown. Chapter 9-10 Chaos Unknown. Sailboats followed the same direction in the vast void. On the deck of a huge sailboat at the front stood a middle-aged Taoist. 10 palm-sized stone slabs circled around his body like a puzzle, mysterious and unfathomable. The middle-aged Taoist stared at the beautiful starry universe ahead and frowned. A living being with a snake body and human head beside him smiled and said, "I didn't expect such a heavens beyond to be hidden in the chaos. It's very suitable for us races to survive." The middle-aged Taoist said, "Something's wrong. There are no powerful restrictions nearby, and there's no aura of living beings inside. Why aren't there any other races here?" The snake-headed man said, "The chaos is endless. It's normal that it's not discovered by living beings." "That's true, but it's better to be careful." The middle-aged Taoist hesitated. The snake-headed man nodded and went down to pass the order. At the same time, in the third Tao field, Han Huang looked at the races outside the universe with a happy expression. "Freedom Sage, you can give me a chance to practice and eat," Han Huang muttered to himself. He jumped and wanted to rush out. Boom! You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. The invisible Tao field array formation in the sky blocked him. The sky rippled. startling all the disciples in the Dao field. Han Qing'er was surprised. What was this kid trying to do? She looked up and quickly saw the mysterious race outside the universe. Second brother, don't worry. There won't be any danger with Jiang Jieshi around, Han Qing'er shouted. She had previously witnessed Jiang Jieshi taking action to resist the enemy. Han Huang frowned when he heard that. He didn't continue to fight the Dao field array formation. He turned around and flew in front of Hanju's Taoist temple. He wanted to enter and asked him to let him out, but he couldn't open the door. Hanju was busy cultivating and couldn't be disturbed. Han Huang was moved. He was already a great Dao sage, but he couldn't open this door. He knew that his father was very strong, but he didn't expect him to still be so strong that he couldn't even tell how much. He was already a great Dao sage, but he couldn't even open the door of a Taoist temple? Han Huang didn't believe it. He gritted his teeth and continued pushing, using all his strength. However, he couldn't open the door no matter how hard he tried. Even using the divine might Great Heaven Palm was useless. Han Huang let go and left. He returned to his Taoist temple to cultivate in seclusion. At the same time, Jiang Jieshi moved out of the universe. Han Qing'er began to watch the battle. Jiang Jieshi was already invincible in the Freedom Realm. The leader of the other party's race was only a freedom sage, so he was naturally not his match. The battle did not last long. Jiang Jieshi easily won. Han Qing'er sighed. No wonder he can suppress second brother. He's indeed powerful. She was very respectful every time she watched Jiang Jieshi's battle. Qingwan'er also witnessed the battle and praised him. As expected of your father's disciple. He should be your father's most proud disciple, right? Han Qing'er shook her head. Not necessarily. I heard from second brother that Jiang Jieshi is at most in the top 10 under father. Qingwan'er shook her head and laughed. Han Qing'er glanced at her and couldn't help but ask. Mother, you don't seem to be curious about father? Be careful not to let father find a few more women. Qingwan'er smiled. So be it. Your father has been filled with mystery ever since I met him. I like him to be mysterious. Reviving is already something I didn't dare to think about in the past. How can I disturb your father's cultivation? Han Qing'er curled her lips. She couldn't understand her mother, but she didn't say anything. Everyone had their own choices. Besides, her father was indeed perfect. Be it his looks, cultivation, personality, or bearing, she felt that no one could compare. Han Qing'er wondered how heroic her husband would be, at least compared to her father. No, her father was the strongest. It was fine as long as he was 80% as good as him. Another 100,000 years passed. Hanju opened his eyes. His cultivation had improved greatly. He first sent a dream to Divine Lord Peacock and confirmed that he had escaped. Divine Lord Peacock kept kowtowing to him in the dream. He was completely convinced by the Dark Forbidden Lord now. He naturally had to cling to such a backing, if he could save him, without attacking. Hanju sent a dream to the ultimate god of punishment next. He told him about the ancient desolate divine spirit. I already know about this. The ancient desolate divine spirit is very powerful. I'm not his match, the ultimate god of punishment said with a solemn expression. This was also why he did not dare to personally go to the ancient desolate. Hanju raised his eyebrows. He knew that the ultimate god of punishment was not the ancient desolate divine spirit's match. The difference in value was huge. He only wanted him to prepare early. The ultimate god of punishment said helplessly. Fellow Taoist, you should be able to see that there are many areas in the chaos that can't be spied on. The mighty figures hidden are immeasurable. After all, the chaos has existed for a long time, so long that it's impossible to calculate the time. Hanju remained silent. Why did he feel that the ultimate god of punishment was weaker now? Weaker after becoming good? On second thought, it made sense. In the past, the ultimate god of punishment had challenged high-level figures and had far fewer enemies than the primordial ancestor god. Now that he was sitting in the primordial ancestor god's position, countless eyes were staring at him. The pressure was far greater than before, and he did not dare to act recklessly. I will be careful about this matter. Thank you for your reminder, fellow Taoist. You don't have to worry. I also have a certain understanding of the ancient desolate. It can't harm the chaos for now, the ultimate god of punishment said seriously. His tone was sincere, as if he was touched by Hanju's gesture. Hanju didn't believe that he would be touched and immediately chatted with him. He opened his eyes after ending the dream. From the ultimate god of punishment's words, could this fellow have a good relationship with the ancient desolate divine spirit? He should be uneasy even if he couldn't win, but he was so calm. It was very likely that they were on good terms. Hanju didn't have the urge to spend his lifespan to derive it. It was fine even if he didn't guess correctly. In any case, he was on good terms with the ultimate god of punishment, which was equivalent to being on good terms with the ancient desolate divine spirit. It had nothing to do with him, who was the boss in the chaos, as long as they didn't provoke him. He could hide in the Tao field, even if they wanted to provoke him. No one could barge into his Tao field in the entire chaos, including the Tao creators. Hanju began to check his emails, and paid attention to the recent developments in his circle of friends. Fog covered the sky in a dark world. The ground was flat and vast. Tao Sovereign, Zhao Xianyuan and Jiang Yi sat together. Lao Dan stood not far away and looked around. There's no danger, right? I already told you. Don't worry, my treasure is reliable. It will definitely inform us if any dangerous aura approaches. Zhao Xianyuan smiled. Lao Dan snorted. Your treasure might work elsewhere, but not here. Zhao Xianyuan shook his head and laughed. Jiang Yi said, I really feel like something is staring at us. Could it be the fellow who hunted us earlier? No way. How long has it been? We've been recuperating for 1,000 years. Zhao Xianyuan frowned and felt uneasy. It was difficult for them to predict good things, but one would be more accurate than the other if it was something unlucky. The more Zhao Xianyuan thought about it, the more uneasy he became. He suddenly stood up and looked around, afraid that an enemy would appear. Jiang Yi sighed. I'm already prepared to be injured. Chapter 9:11, 200,000 Divine Authority Generals. Chapter 9:11, 200,000 Divine Authority Generals. Fellow Taoist, why aren't you saying anything? Jiang Yi looked at Tao Sovereign and asked. He couldn't help but be moved. Tao Sovereign closed his eyes and frowned. Killing intent flowed between his brows, and he was in a strange state. Zhao Xianyuan and Lao Dan turned around, and also sensed that something was wrong. Lao Dan flashed in front of Tao Sovereign, and tapped him. However, no matter how he cast his spell, Tao Sovereign could not wake up. Zhao Xianyuan asked nervously, will something happen to him? They were all freedom sages, and had not been affected by such evil for a long time. Lao Dan said with a solemn expression, something's wrong. Something's too wrong. He's not injured at all. There are no abnormal dermic powers in his body. His soul is also here. How can this be? He went behind Tao Sovereign and continued to check his body. At this moment, Tao Sovereign opened his eyes and suddenly stood up. He kicked Lao Dan away and disappeared into the mist. Zhao Xianyuan and Jiang Yi were shocked. They immediately assumed a posture and prepared to fight. Tao Sovereign turned to look at them. At this moment his eyes had changed. His pupils were like two black snakes connected head to tail. It was abnormally terrifying. Fellow Taoist, what's wrong? Zhao Xianyuan asked seriously. He had never encountered such a situation before. Jiang Yi said, is his will occupied by something? You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Calm. Tao Sovereign smiled sinisterly. Two little children. Their potential is not bad. It just so happens that I need chaotic life-form servants. At this moment, Lao Dan appeared in front of the two of them. He stared at Tao Sovereign and asked, who are you? Why are you occupying my disciple nephew's body? Tao Sovereign stretched his neck and said, don't worry, I won't harm him. If you obey me, there will be great opportunities in the future. Have you heard of the legend of the ancient desolate? Legend of the ancient desolate? Lao Dan frowned. Zhao Xianyuan and Jiang Yi looked at each other. They were thinking about how to attack. Tao Sovereign said, I am the spirit of the ancient desolate. From now on, I will summon endless Tao devils and the ghosts at the bottom of the chaos to overturn the chaos together. If you assist me in advance, you can avoid death and obtain a transcendent status in the new chaos. Lao Dan smiled faintly. You make it sound so tempting. But do you really understand the chaos? Why do you want to destroy the chaos? The previous 20,000 divine authority generals all fell in front of the heavenly Tao. The divine authority generals are equivalent to great Tao sages, and are first-rate great Tao sages. Tao's sovereign revealed a strange smile. I naturally know about this. Even so, I have to be completely confident, and the heavenly Tao is the target I want to trample on. With that said, the surrounding mist began to churn like flood dragons. The scene was spectacular and terrifying. Lao Dan narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists in his sleeves. Tao's sovereign slowly rose and spread his hands. He smiled wildly and said, Do you know that the great Tao sage is at the great Tao primordial chaos realm? Above this great Tao primordial chaos realm is the great Tao supreme realm. The three of them were moved. Jiang Yi asked in a low voice, Are you a great Tao supreme? Tao's sovereign laughed wantonly, his laughter filled with disdain. I've long surpassed the great Tao supreme and reached a higher level. The great Tao sages are no different from mortals in front of me. So what if there are more of them? If the divine might heavenly sage can destroy 20,000 divine authority generals, I can destroy 200,000. Where Zhao Xinyuan, Jiang Yi, and Lao Dan were shocked. Even Lao Dan did not know that there was a realm beyond the great Tao supreme realm. After all, his main body was only at the great Tao supreme realm. If what this fellow said was true, it was really possible to change the chaos. Jiang Yi asked angrily, Why are you trampling on the heavenly Tao? Are you chaotic mighty figures crazy? You always find trouble with the heavenly Tao. Tao's sovereign looked at him coldly. The terrifying killing intent locked onto him, making him cold and nervous. Although he was afraid, Jiang Yi's arrogance still made him glare at Tao's sovereign. Jiang Yi was also the #1 prodigy, who had suppressed the world in the heavenly Tao. Tao's sovereign suddenly smiled. Seeing that you're a junior, I won't bicker with you. Why is the heavenly Tao suffering so much? That's because the heavenly Tao has done too many sins. The Tao ancestor pretended to disappear, and really thought that he could let everything go. Impossible. Let's see if that Tao ancestor can still sit still when I flatten the heavenly Tao. Lao Dan asked in confusion. You told us so much. Do you really think highly of us? Tao's sovereign smiled and said, Think highly of you? I'm just giving you a chance. My will is spread billions of times throughout the various worlds. Talking to you here will not waste my time, understand? You have nowhere to run. Either follow me or wait for death. He suddenly glanced at Zhao Xinyuan, his eyes flickering. At this moment, Zhao Xuanyuan's consciousness had already entered the myriad worlds projection. Something bad has happened. The heavenly Tao is threatened again. The three of us have been captured. Zhao Xinyuan shouted anxiously. At this moment, there were only a few people in the myriad worlds projection, including the Black Hell Chicken. The Black Hell Chicken yawned. If you want help, so be it. Don't brag. No one can save you. Either that or ask Master for help. Zhao Xinyuan gritted his teeth. The other party is from the ancient Desolate, and claims to be able to kill 200,000 divine authority generals. I don't dare to rashly summon Master. 200,000 divine authority generals. The Black Hell Chicken trembled in fear. Before it could speak, Zhao Xinyuan suddenly disappeared. The Black Hell Chicken left the myriad worlds projection, and gathered all the chaotic fiend celestials to report what Zhao Xinyuan had just said. Morongqi frowned. Is there another commotion in the chaos? Guanbubi snorted. That's normal. The chaos is endless. In addition to the long years, there are naturally countless hidden mighty figures. The other fiend celestials had solemn expressions. There were already divine authority generals in the simulation trial. They had all challenged them before, and could not even defeat one. They were all insta-killed. Let's wait for Master to come to the Tao field. Or let Master's wife tell him. Sun Chang'an pondered. His words were agreed by the fiend celestials. Currently, they were not strong enough to resist a great Tao supreme. The heavenly constellation fiend celestial said unhappily. Our growth speed is still too slow. 3 fiend celestials must attain the great Tao in 1,000,000 years, understand? He scanned the others. Most of them did not dare to look at him. The great Tao was not so easy to attain. Even a chaotic fiend celestial needed time. In the blink of an eye, 100,000 years passed. Hanju opened his eyes and let Xing Hongxian and Han Huang in. Husband, something bad has happened. The heavenly Tao is facing another calamity. Your disciple has been captured. Xing Hongxian said anxiously. Han Huang's expression did not change, but he was very curious. Hanju said, "Tell me slowly and clearly." At the same time, he pinched his fingers to deduce, and discovered that the karma of Tao's sovereign and the other two had indeed disappeared. He checked their interpersonal relationships. Their portraits were still there. Xing Hongxian recounted what she had learned from the Black Hell Chicken. He could kill 200,000 divine authority generals? From the Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit. He did not expect them to take action so quickly. Hanju said, "I already know about this. I'll think of a way." Han Huang couldn't help but ask, "Father, I just fought a divine authority general to a draw not long ago. Can you really kill 20,000 divine authority generals with one strike?" Chapter 9:12 Breakthrough Storm Rises. Chapter 9:12 Breakthrough Storm Rises. I was just lucky. I attacked before the 20,000 divine authority generals made their move, so I killed them in one go, Hanju muttered. Han Huang was enlightened. Just one divine authority general was enough to make him feel unshakable. How terrifying was the scene of 20,000 divine authority generals combined? Han Huang asked. Then, are you going to save your disciples? They are all my senior brothers. Bring me along. Hanju glared at him. The other party can kill 200,000 divine authority generals. How can I deal with them? You can't be rash about this. Don't go and die. Go and die. Han Huang was stunned, but soon understood what he meant. Hanju was mocking him for overestimating himself. Father, I also want to help you. I'm a great Tao sage now. Although I can't defeat the enemy, I won't be a burden. Han Huang said angrily. How powerful was the great Tao sage? He could observe the entire chaos and know the past and present. He was not restricted by the 3,000 great Tao. Even if he was inferior to that enemy, he was still a threat. Hanju said helplessly. I have a junior who has unparalleled talent in the chaos. After attaining the great Tao, he was suppressed by a mighty figure for hundreds of thousands of years. If not for me, he would probably have died. His potential is not worth mentioning in the chaos. His current cultivation and strength are what he relies on. Han Huang frowned. Hanju stared at him and asked, Do you really want to go out? If you do, I can let you out to train. However, your identity is special, and you will definitely encounter an endless stream of powerful enemies. Sai, who asked me to be your father. When the time comes, I will definitely be busy saving you. Han Huang was agitated and snorted. I didn't say that I wanted to go out. I still have to cultivate and come out when I'm invincible. With that, he turned around and left. You are reading on MYBOXN0VEL. Calm Xing Hongxian covered her mouth and chuckled as she watched the father and son fight. The father and son were completely different. One was extremely timid, while the other was extremely arrogant. However, they did not like to fail. Hanju was afraid of failure, so he fled the battle. Han Huang was afraid of failure, so he did not act on impulse. Xing Hongxian spoke to Hanju for a while before quickly leaving. She knew that he needed to think alone. Xing Hongxian didn't dare to raise any objections. She couldn't help either. The only thing she could do was not to cause trouble for him. Hanju was the only one left in the temple. Not worried, he started to check the emails. With his experience, as long as the three of them were not dead, they would not die in half a day. The enemy had already suppressed them. They would have killed them long ago if that was their intention. Hanju was already used to his disciples being caught. If they really couldn't take it, they would use the invocation technique on him. Your disciple Tao Sovereign was possessed by a mysterious mighty figure. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor has spied on the true meaning of chaos. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your disciple Zhou Fan was attacked. X90, your good friend, the ultimate god of punishment, was cursed by a mysterious curse. Your grand disciple Chu Shuren cut away the 3 corpses and created the evil Buddha. Your son Han Tua was attacked by a mysterious Tao devil, X1097832222. Your good friend Yi Tian was attacked by a mysterious Tao devil X1087782221. Your disciple Jiang Juesher has comprehended the Great Tao and wants to cross the door of the Great Tao. He was stopped by a mysterious mighty figure and failed to attain the Tao. Han Ju showed a frown. Jiang Juesher had even begun to break through to the Great Tao. He failed. He pinched his fingers to deduce. So it was a Great Tao divine spirit who stopped Jiang Juesher from attaining the Tao. Jiang Juesher did not have a powerful background, at least on the surface, so it was very easy for him to be suppressed by a mighty figure. The more Great Tao sages there were, the worse it was for them. Previously, Han Huang had successfully broken through because the divine robe Taoist had personally protected him. Even the great Tao sages had to give him face. Han Ju looked at Jiang Juesher. At this moment, his disciple was meditating and cultivating. He did not seem affected. Han Ju didn't find trouble with that great Tao divine spirit. Instead, he sent a dream to the divine robe Taoist and told him about Jiang Juesher's relationship with him, asking him to take care of him in the future. Although the universe of stars was not under the divine robe Taoist jurisdiction, he could protect Jiang Juesher at the door of the great Tao. After that, Han Ju sent a dream to Jiang Juesher. Jiang Juesher opened his eyes and hurriedly bowed when he saw Han Ju, who was covered in divine light. Han Ju said, "Why didn't you tell me that you failed?" Jiang Juesher said in shame, "I'm ashamed. How can I ask you for help? I tried my best but couldn't open that door. I even suffered a backlash." Sigh. Han Ju said, "Someone is blocking the door. I've already instructed a mighty figure to protect you next time. It's not difficult for you to attain the great Tao with your potential. Don't be discouraged." Hearing this, Jiang Juesher was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed and hurriedly knelt to thank him. Han Ju waved his sleeve and said, "You still need to work hard after attaining the great Tao. Your goal is to participate in the chaotic assembly. Not only you, but my other disciples will also participate. Don't be careless. Your potential is impressive, but you might not be the best in the entire sect." Jiang Juesher nodded. He had long recognized this. Not to mention the others, he only knew 2 people. Not to mention Liu Bei. Just Han Huang made him feel ordinary. "Master, what's little Junior's cultivation level?" Jiang Juesher couldn't help but ask. Han Ju didn't hide anything. He's already attained the great Tao. Jiang Juesher was moved. He felt a sense of urgency that he had not felt for a long time. This was the sense of urgency he had before he comprehended the great reincarnation technique. His Tao heart was still stable. He was not a prodigy to begin with. He only had great opportunities and talent. Moreover, Han Huang's potential was top-notch in the chaos. He couldn't compare to natural existences. Will little junior brother participate in the chaotic assembly? Han Ju smiled. Of course. Jiang Juesher's eyes lit up. He could suppress Han Huang previously, but he would do the same to him in the future. Han Ju didn't say anything else and removed the dream. He began to cultivate. He had to break through first. It might not be safe to deal with the ancient desolate divine spirit now, but his strength would definitely increase when he broke through. He was not far from breaking through. He could do it in at most 100,000 years. The cultivation speed of the ultimate origin fiend celestial was very fast. In the ancient desolate, dense mist filled the air, and mountains rose and fell. There were countless rivers and lakes. It was like a desolate ancient world. At this moment, in the sky of the ancient desolate, the ultimate god of punishment stepped on the clouds. The ultimate god of punishment was still wearing blood-stained divine armor. His aura was oppressive, and the airwaves around him were like long dragons. Soon, he arrived in front of an endless lake. It was like an ocean. The surface of the lake was filled with mist, as if there was a terrifying beast hidden inside. The ultimate god of punishment said, "Fellow Taoist, we meet an old friend. Aren't you going to show yourself?" A cold voice sounded. "Since you're here, you should indeed appear. However, you're the leader of the divine spirits now. I wonder if you still remember our past relationship." The ultimate god of punishment said, "You want to take revenge on the Tao ancestor. I only want to protect the chaos. There's no conflict, right?" The world fell silent. The ultimate god of punishment said, "Could it be that you also want to touch the chaos?" "Of course not. But I want to ask you, ultimate god, can you control the power of a supreme divine authority like the divine authority general?" The other party asked coldly. Chapter 913 Breakthrough to the Late Stage, 30 Million Divine Authority Generals. Chapter 913 Breakthrough to the Late Stage, 30 Million Divine Authority Generals. The ultimate god of punishment was silent upon facing the question of the mysterious existence of the Great Swamp. Although he was the leader of the divine spirits, he did not control the great Tao Providence divine authority, like the primordial ancestor god, and could not mobilize the divine authority generals. From this point of view, he was not the true leader of the divine spirits. He had been trying to control the great Tao Providence divine authority, but he did not succeed. Therefore, he felt that there was a higher existence behind the great Tao supreme divine authority. Ultimate God, join forces with me. I will give you the authority to truly become the leader of the divine spirits when I absorb the providence of the chaos and surpass an unprecedented realm. You have already reached your limit and can no longer become stronger. The mysterious existence's voice sounded again. The ultimate god of punishment sighed. But can I believe you? You obtained the chaotic cheese providence. Will you treat the chaos well? This mysterious existence was the ancient desolate divine spirit. The ancient desolate divine spirit said faintly, "If you believe me, help me. If you don't, I will also insist." Ultimate God, I don't have many good friends, and there aren't many who survived. It can even be said that only you are left. I've been suppressed for so many years. I can't do anything if you still don't believe me. The ultimate god of punishment smiled. Fellow Taoist, you must be joking. I came to see you because of our relationship. It's just that I have to be responsible for all the living beings in the chaos now. If you haven't forgotten the agreement in the past, I naturally believe you. The ancient desolate divine spirit sighed. The agreement of the past was really long ago. Fellow Taoists, please believe me. I can sense that there are mysterious existences above the great Tao divine spirit. We can only join forces to truly break through the old situation of the chaos. The ultimate god of punishment nodded. I often feel that I'm being spied on. I even feel that the primordial ancestor god might not really have died. Perhaps his origin is still hidden in the divine authority and waiting for an opportunity to reappear. The surface of the lake stirred up 2 rows of huge waves that slapped in the opposite direction, causing a valley in the middle to open. The ultimate god immediately walked into the air. Time passed quickly. More than 70,000 years later, Hanju finally broke through and reached the late-stage Great Tao Supreme Realm. He checked his attributes panel as he consolidated his cultivation. Name: Hanju, lifespan: 7,381,785/1, 099, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999 quadrillion 999 trillion 999 billion 999 million 999,999. Race: Ultimate origin Fiend Celestial, Immeasurable Emperor. Cultivation: Late-stage Great Tao Supreme Realm, Perfect Sage. Technique: Primordial Chaos Reincarnation Great Tao Heavenly Cycle Body Tempering Great Tao of Life and Death, Great Tao of Karma, Great Tao of Extreme Origin. His lifespan doubled again. Hanju couldn't be bothered to calculate. He could feel the ultimate origin power transforming crazily. This power was too obvious. It far exceeded the feeling of breaking through previously, as if it was breaking through a major realm. A true transformation. Was this the ultimate origin Fiend Celestial? Hanju was overjoyed. He wanted to see how many foolish sword sages he could fight now. 3,000 years later, Hanju's cultivation finally stabilized. He began to cultivate his mystical powers. 500 years later, there were 500 new Fiend Celestial Dharma idols. Currently, He had grasped 2,949. He was already extremely close to the 3,000 fiend celestial Dharma idols. He would definitely be able to control 3,000 fiend celestials, as long as he broke through to the perfected realm. Hanju was already looking forward to that day, at least before the chaotic assembly. At that time, he would better protect his disciples and let them show their talent. Hanju opened his eyes and started the simulation trial. He directly challenged 200,000 foolish sword sages. The great Tao Supreme Realm foolish sword sage claimed that he could fight 100 divine authority generals. Hanju was equivalent to fighting 20 million divine authority generals. Indeed, Hanju's strength advanced by leaps and bounds after breaking through a minor realm. The increase in strength of the ultimate origin fiend celestial could not be reflected by cultivation. Hanju used his full strength to kill 200,000 foolish sword sages with the divine might great heaven palm. He added another 10,000. No problem. Instant kill. 220,000 foolish sword sages. Hanju had no choice but to use the primordial judgment sword to insta-kill them. The number of opponents continued to increase. The limit of Hanju's insta-kill was 250,000 foolish sword sages. He could still kill them all if he faced 300,000 of them, but he couldn't insta-kill them. He only cared about insta-kills. In his opinion, as long as he was not insta-killed, the enemy would have a chance to escape or even counterattack. Fighting in reality was far more complicated than the simulation trial. Of course, he would not try his best at the beginning like in the simulation trial. Hanju began to challenge the divine authority generals. He directly challenged 30 million in one go. However, he discovered that the number of divine authority generals no longer meant anything to him. It couldn't be compared to the foolish sword sage. There was still a difference in cultivation level. It was also easy for him to challenge 50 million foolish sword sages. Hanju no longer fought with the divine authority generals. Can I insta-kill the ancient desolate divine spirit? Hanju asked silently. 100 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Not for the time being. Hanju was a little disappointed. The ancient desolate divine spirit said that he could kill 200,000 divine authority generals. But that did not mean that that was his limit. After all, he didn't have a simulation trial. This could only mean one thing. The ancient desolate divine spirit did not care about the divine authority generals. Hanju hesitated for a moment and asked, "If I'm serious, can the ancient desolate divine spirit kill me?" This question and the previous question were both related to the cultivation of the ancient desolate divine spirit. There should be no need to deduct his lifespan. After all, the two questions were asked one after another. The cultivation of the ancient desolate divine spirit did not change. No, that was good. In other words, they were evenly matched. Hanju thought for a moment and sent a dream to Zhao Xianyuan. The dream was the 100-peak immortal river. Zhao Xianyuan opened his eyes and saw Hanju. He was immediately excited. "Master, are you coming to save us?" Zhao Xianyuan hurriedly asked. Hanju said, "Did Laozi save Lao Dan?" Zhao Xianyuan shook his head. Hanju asked, "Who led the way this time?" Zhao Xianyuan was stunned. "I said that there was an opportunity at the bottom of the chaos, but the one who insisted on coming was Tao Sovereign." He understood what Hanju meant. He was suspecting Lao Dan. Hanju asked, "How's your situation? Can you wait any longer?" Zhao Xianyuan nodded. "We'll pretend to submit and be fine for the time being. It's just that Tao Sovereign has been possessed and his safety is unknown. Master, we're fine. You can save us if you're confident. After all, the enemy is mysterious and powerful this time." Hanju said meaningfully, "You can send news in the myriad worlds projection if Laozi makes a move." Zhao Xianyuan hurriedly agreed. Hanju left the dream. Then, he flashed into the Universal Hall. At this moment, other than Heavenly Venerate Xiandu, there was another person in the hall. It was the prodigy that the Heavenly Tao had finally nurtured with all its might, Azure Heaven Mystic. Heavenly Venerate Xiandu saw Hanju, and hurriedly stood up to bow. Azure Heaven Mystic turned around and saw Hanju. He was puzzled. Who was this person? Hanju nodded and asked, "Can we talk?" Heavenly Venerate Xiandu said, Of course. This is the new sage of the heavenly Tao, Azure Heaven Mystic. This is the divine might heavenly sage. Aren't you going to bow? Hearing this, Azure Heaven Mystic stood up and bowed to Hanju. He looked at him with a burning gaze. Chapter 9:14 Wei Divine World. Chapter 9:14 Wei Divine World. Hanju glanced at Azure Heaven Mystic and didn't say anything. He didn't want to have anything to do with this fellow. After all, a Tao creator was behind Azure Heaven Mystic. This kid was only a pawn. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du waved his hand and gestured for Azure Heaven Mystic to leave. Azure Heaven Mystic stared at Hanju and hesitated. In the end, he was forced to leave by Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's gaze. Only Hanju and Heavenly Venerate Xian Du were left in the hall. The two sages sat down. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du smiled and said, "That Azure Heaven Mystic is the most talented person in the Heavenly Tao now. We have decided to nurture him, to make a name for himself in the chaotic assembly. I wonder if you have any intention of taking in another disciple?" Hanju shook his head and smiled. "Forget it. If I accept him again, it will seem like I'm plotting something. I have to leave some prodigies to you so that the Heavenly Tao can be passed down." Heavenly Venerate Xian Du smiled. He was only being polite, and naturally wanted to recruit the prodigies of the world. "Heavenly Sage, why are you here?" "The Heavenly Tao is facing another calamity." "What?" "This calamity comes from the Ancient Desolate." Hanju recounted what he knew. He was not afraid that the Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit would deduce that this fellow had captured his disciple, and still wanted to flatten the Heavenly Tao. There was no room for negotiation. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's expression was extremely ugly after he finished speaking. To dare say that he could kill 200,000 divine authority generals, such an expert was indeed terrifying. He looked at him and asked, "What are your chances of winning against the Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit?" Hanju shook his head. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's heart sank. Hanju said, "Make preparations early. I think the Ancient Desolate Divine Spirit is also related to the leader of the Divine Spirits. Of course, it's only a guess. I mean that the Heavenly Tao can only rely on itself, understand?" Heavenly Venerate Xian Du nodded. Hanju asked, "By the way, what kind of existence is the Tao ancestor?" He discovered that the Tao ancestor's past was complicated. An existence who was powerful enough to suppress a perfected Great Tao Supreme, was afraid of the Great Tao Divine Spirit, and suppressed the development of the Heavenly Tao. It was really strange. In Hanju's opinion, the primordial ancestor God was not the Tao ancestor's match. As for the 5 Tao creators, they transcended the chaos, and did not care about it at all. Why would the Tao ancestor be afraid? Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, "I actually don't know the Tao ancestor very well. In the past, I only listened to the Tao in the Purple Firmament Palace. Ever since the Tao ancestor disappeared, I discovered that my impression of him slowly dissipated. I can't remember his appearance or even his words. I can only remember that he once existed." Speaking of this, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du had an extremely strange expression. Hanju showed a frown. The Tao ancestor's concealment technique was so powerful? He erased all living beings' memories of him? Hanju shook his head and stood up. He left after saying, "Then prepare to fight the enemy. I don't know when the Ancient Desolate will attack. You can deploy to the Ancient Desolate in advance, and guard against the commotion at any time." With that, Hanju disappeared. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du did not move and frowned. He sighed heavily. Why were the tribulations always coming one after another? He thought that he could enjoy a long period of peace. After thinking about it, he felt that it was all the Tao ancestor and the first-generation sage's fault. They would either disappear or directly become enemies of the Heavenly Tao. He was filled with resentment. These seniors were too unreliable. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Come in." Azure Heaven Mystic, who was waiting outside the hall, transformed into a cool breeze and instantly arrived in front of him. "Where's the Divine Might Heavenly Sage?" Azure Heaven Mystic looked around and asked in confusion. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, "Of course he's already left. Otherwise, how can I let you come in?" Azure Heaven Mystic said unhappily. Why can't I see him? His talent had already been recognized and was world-shattering. If not for the sages stopping him from going to the chaos, he would very likely shatter the legend of the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's Tao attainment speed. The Divine Might Heavenly Sage is busy. What right do you have to see him? No matter how powerful your potential is, it's only potential. Even I can't see him anytime I want. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du shook his head. Azure Heaven Mystic was silent. Although these words were a little hurtful, it was the truth. If it was anyone else, he would definitely not be convinced. But the other party was the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. He had no choice but to be convinced. He had always heard legends about the Divine Might Heavenly Sage during his cultivation. Ever since he was young, he had worshipped the legend of the Divine Might Heavenly Sage turning the tide. He was determined to become the second Divine Might Heavenly Sage. However, after reaching the Sage realm, he knew that the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was already the strongest in the chaos. He worshipped the Divine Might Heavenly Sage even more. Of course, it was only admiration. He had always wanted to surpass the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. One day, he would definitely challenge the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. It was not for life and death, but for strength. Heavenly Venerate, I think it's time for me to go to the chaos. The Heavenly Tao has already made it difficult for my cultivation level to advance, Qing Tian said seriously. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's expression did not change, but he was very hesitant. He was afraid that Azure Heaven Mystic's existence would be found out by other worlds, especially the three pure sacred world. However, he thought of Hanju. How could he be poached if he really belonged to the Heavenly Tao? Hanju didn't even care about Azure Heaven Mystic. Why was he so worried? Besides, the more he suppressed this fellow, the easier it was for something to happen. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, "All right, you have to be careful on this trip. If you encounter trouble, come back at any time. Don't be afraid that the other party has a powerful background. The Heavenly Tao can afford it. The current Heavenly Tao is no longer afraid of any force in the chaos." Azure Heaven Mystic smiled. "Don't worry. I'm not a rash person. Besides, I'm the kindest and won't slaughter the innocent." Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said helplessly, "Yes, but you like fighting. This is a disaster." "I understand. I'll change." Azure Heaven Mystic waved his hand impatiently. He hated preaching the most. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du ignored his attitude and continued to remind him. Several hours later, Azure Heaven Mystic was finally freed. Before he left, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du even gave him a supreme treasure, making him secretly touched. Azure Heaven Mystic also understood that the sages were afraid that he would betray the Heavenly Tao, so they did not dare to let him go to the chaos. He didn't hate this. Instead, his heart warmed, but he did not say anything. This attitude showed his status and importance in the Heavenly Tao. This was what he wanted the most. In the Taoist temple of the third Tao field, Hanju looked at Jiang Juesher and Han Huang for a while before checking the emails. He saw that Tao's sovereign was often tortured. He hesitated to use the Book of Misfortune. The Book of Misfortune was strong, but it might not be able to curse the ancient desolate divine spirit to death. It might even alert it. Hanju wanted to destroy him in one go, and not give him a chance to escape. He would copy his cultivation first. Hanju immediately sent a dream to the ancient desolate divine spirit. The dream was the chaotic void. The ancient desolate divine spirit was completely black and vaguely humanoid. Its eyes were red, and he looked like a peerless demon in the void. It was terrifying. He looked at him and asked, "Who are you? You can actually forcefully pull me into a dream. Your methods are impressive." Hanju said, "I'm Chao Chao of the Way Divine World. You captured my disciples. Can you let them go?" Chao Chao of the Way Divine World? The ancient desolate divine spirit seemed to be deducing. Chapter 9:15 8 Quadrillion Tao Devils. Chapter 9:15 8 Quadrillion Tao Devils. This fellow has already possessed my disciple, but he's still calculating. How pretentious, Hanju thought disdainfully. The ancient desolate divine spirit asked, "Who are your disciples?" Hanju said, "Tao Sovereign Zhao Xianyuan Jiangyi." As for Lao Dan, he did not mention him. After all, it was Lao Dan's suggestion to go to the bottom of the chaos. He couldn't rule out a trap. Leave Lao Dan to Laozi. The ancient desolate divine spirit chuckled. I have some impression of these three. Their potential is indeed extraordinary. I'm afraid I can't return them to you. Hanju smiled and asked, fellow Taoist, you're really willful. He directly used the dark forbidden zone and turned the dream into reality, quickly scanning the ancient desolate divine spirit's cultivation. The ancient desolate divine spirit said meaningfully, the dream has turned into reality. The divine might heavenly sage is indeed impressive. It seems that if I want to flatten the heavenly Tao, I have to eliminate you first. Hanju had already activated all his supreme treasures. Why must you deal with the heavenly Tao? Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Can't you look for the Tao ancestor? Besides, the heavenly Tao and the ancient desolate share the same origin. You're equivalent to fighting among brothers. The ancient desolate divine spirit was actually equivalent to a heavenly Tao divine spirit, but it was separated. The ancient desolate divine spirit smiled. Fellow Taoist, you really know a lot. However, why are you so naive? Or are you pretending not to know? The Tao ancestor has long fused with the heavenly Tao. He didn't disappear. He only transformed into the heavenly Tao. The Tao ancestor was in the heavenly Tao. P.L.S. read on MYB0's novelle. Com the ancient desolate divine spirit smiled disdainfully. Since you want to fight, let me see how powerful the divine might heavenly sage is. He suddenly raised his hand, and a black aura transformed into a fog that drowned Hanju. The fog was filled with terrifying negative karma and resentment. It was extremely cold. In a daze, it was as if there were billions of ghosts wailing and roaring. Hanju immediately used the divine might great heaven palm. The power of his final essence poured out and transformed into a domineering palm force that destroyed all the surrounding fog. He used the great Tao of traversal and the great Tao of space to quickly escape. How fast was he? Divine might heavenly sage, you are indeed very strong. However, it's impossible for you to escape me. The heavenly Tao will be flattened when I create 8 quadrillion Tao devils. The voice of the ancient desolate divine spirit entered Hanju's ears. His tone was filled with joy, as if Hanju was the Tao ancestor and he was taking revenge. The ancient desolate divine spirit has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, 6 stars. Hanju ignored him and quickly returned to the heavenly Tao. He jumped into the 100-peak immortal river and went to the 3rd Tao field. The reason why he took a detour was that he was afraid of harming the universe. Hanju sat on the 36th grade reincarnation world destruction Black Lotus and heaved a sigh of relief. It had to be said that the ancient desolate divine spirit was indeed powerful. It had given him a very dangerous feeling just now. However, it was only a dangerous feeling. The pressure did not turn into despair. Hanju began the simulation trial and challenged the ancient desolate divine spirit. 5 minutes later, he opened his eyes with an extremely solemn expression. The ancient desolate divine spirit was amazing. Hanju finally saw the Tao devils. The ancient desolate divine spirit's Tao devil mystical power was similar to the 3,000 fiend celestial Dharma idols. It contained different great Tao powers, but there were 1,000 types. It was not as many as him. In the end, Hanju still successfully killed the ancient desolate divine spirit, but it took him 5 minutes to fight with all his might. This was a simulation trial. The ancient desolate divine spirit attacked with all his might, only attacking and not retreating. If it was in reality, the ancient desolate divine spirit could completely stall for time and hide if he couldn't win. Once Hanju was restrained and the 8 quadrillion Tao devils stepped into the heavenly Tao, it would be like a wolf amidst a flock of sheep. Hanju had heard that there were also great Tao sages among the Tao devils. Who knew how many great Tao sages were hidden among the 8 quadrillion Tao devils? Most importantly was the ultimate god's attitude. Hanju felt that the ultimate god of punishment was related to the ancient desolate divine spirit. He could guess from the previous conversation that what he had said to the ultimate god had very likely been told to the ancient desolate divine spirit. Hanju continued the simulation trial and tried to find a way to insta-kill the ancient desolate divine spirit. Several days later, Hanju stopped the simulation trial. It would take at least 30 breaths of time to kill the ancient desolate divine spirit. 30 breaths was too long. Something would definitely happen in the meantime. It would be bad if the ultimate god of punishment also joined in. I want to know how long until the ancient desolate divine spirit attacks the heavenly Tao. Hanju asked in his mind. From the ancient desolate divine spirit's words, it would probably take some time. As long as he had time, he could continue to become stronger. 100 trillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. About 8 million years. It was neither long nor short. Compared to the previous crises, 8 million years was too little time for a great Tao sage to improve, let alone a great Tao supreme. But it was different to Hanju. He was the ultimate origin fiend celestial that surpassed all living beings by 2 bloodline levels. He might be able to break through again in 8 million years. Hanju perked up and his eyes flickered coldly. Ancient desolate divine spirit, you're dead. Hanju decided to use the Book of Misfortune to stall for time in the future. In the depths of the ancient desolate, a huge palace sat at the bottom of the lake. The ultimate god of punishment looked at the ancient desolate divine spirit and asked, "Is it the heavenly Tao's divine might heavenly sage?" The ancient desolate divine spirit said, "That's right. He's indeed very strong. As expected of the chaotic fiend celestial's potential, he's even stronger than Panga back then." The ultimate god of punishment said, "Of course. Even Pangu was stomped under the feet of a divine authority general. How can it compare to the divine might heavenly sage? Are you really confident in dealing with him?" The ancient desolate divine spirit stared at him and said, "Of course I'm confident. He's indeed powerful, but he's not my match." The ultimate god of punishment hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Can you let him live and create a great cause together?" The ancient desolate divine spirit was silent. The ultimate god of punishment said, "If you want to break the old situation of the chaos and reconstruct the rules, you and I alone might not be able to succeed. Didn't you say that a mysterious existence above the chaos is spying on it? We don't even know what that is. It's enough to show the difference between us. He might even control the power of the 7 supreme divine authorities. We can be more confident with the divine might heavenly sage's help." He still had a good impression of the divine might heavenly sage, and even felt that he could become his confidant. The ancient desolate divine spirit said faintly, "If you can persuade him, you can naturally do it. However, I will definitely make his cultivation go to ruin if he wants to defend the heavenly Tao." The ultimate god of punishment fell silent. Time passed quickly. Another 100,000 years passed. The calamity of the ancient desolate did not spread in the chaos. Only a few people knew. Hanju opened his eyes and felt the increase in his cultivation. He smiled in satisfaction. It was difficult for the ancient desolate divine spirit not to die with the ultimate origin fiend celestial's talent. Hanju first checked his interpersonal relationships. He was relieved after confirming that the portraits of Tao's sovereign and the other 2 were still there. Then he sent a dream to the ultimate god of punishment. A few years ago, the ultimate god of punishment had sent him a dream, and he had ignored it since he was busy cultivating. His principles could not be broken. In the dream, the ultimate god of punishment opened his eyes and sighed when he saw Hanju. What a domineering method. He actually did not sense it. It would be too terrifying if such a method could kill the enemy. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.